Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the South Burlington City Council meeting for November 17th, 2025. We will start tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Stephen Locke. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Stephen. Agenda item 2, instructions on exiting the building in case of emergency and review of technology options. And we have Stephen Locke, Deputy City Manager.
Good evening, everyone. Jesse will be here hopefully around 7:15 to 7:30. But in the meantime, any emergency in the building, there's doors to left and right in the back of the auditorium, and then you can leave the room and go left or right. For the technology, if you wish to be recognized, just please raise your hand. We will call on you. We are not monitoring the chat feature.
Thank you, Stephen. Item 3, agenda review. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in the order of the agenda items tonight? Okay, great. Moving on to item number 4, which is comments and questions from the public not related to tonight's agenda. I see a hand up in the audience. Please come up, sir. Go to the podium, make sure the bright green light is on, and identify yourself.
Yeah, bright green. Chris Shaw, Moss Glen Lane. I wanted to thank the councilors for their work. I've experienced that over the last year with the Board of Civil Authority as a member there, and you guys have put in a lot of hours. I especially want to single out those like Ann Pugh from the legislature and Elizabeth Fitzgerald from the school board, who have brought additional experience to our city council, which I think is invaluable. So thank you all. Thank you specifically for those who have so much to bring forward. Tonight's comment is about signage, and it's about coming into South Burlington, specifically the jug handle coming in from Burlington or coming up from Route 7, to make sure that we do a good job about welcoming people to South Burlington. I see Williston Road at the top of the toll gate hill, and they do a nice job. I don't know if the Rotary put that sign up, but it's very welcoming. So a plug for that. And since we're working on the water tower, maybe we can go Midwest and put South Burlington's name on the water tower, even if only holographically. So therein is my comment. I'll skip my rant on on-street parking in City Center because I think you have an agenda item on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Is there anybody else in the auditorium that would like to speak about something that's not on our agenda tonight? Anybody online? I don't see any hands up. Oh, I see Barb would like to speak. And I bet that's Barb's service, but I don't know until she...
Oh, yes, you're right.
Wow, I'm sorry, I blew the surprise, so...
Sorry about that. My video apparently.
Are you going to turn on your
doesn't
camera?
turn on.
You don't have to, but...
My video doesn't, I don't have an option to do it.
Okay,
somehow.
so Stephen says you can't turn on your camera, so go ahead.
Okay, then. So you'll have to just deal with the picture of the trees. Sorry about that. Just a short comment. Over the weekend, I was at the University Mall and experienced the traffic confusion at the corner of Garden Street and Dorset. You all did such a great job of fixing a similar problem at Market and Dorset. I'm hoping that maybe somebody will consider making a left turn arrow to ease the congestion that was there. I bet I sat for 10 minutes trying to get out just to go straight there. So just a thought. I know you have 1,000 things on your list. And like Chris Shaw, I want to say I'm very grateful for all that you do. Thank you. And I'll see you in the spring.
Thank you very much, Barb. Anybody else want to make a comment tonight? All right, then we will move on to item 5, which is councilors' announcements and reports on committee assignments and the city manager's report. Elizabeth, would you like to start?
Sure. Thanks, Tim. I did attend a school board meeting and the community forum on the school budget, and I did report out to council that the guidance that was given from a majority of the board was to have a ceiling, or again, the guidance was adopting a ceiling budget of 3.4%, which was the Northeast CPI number. And then I also had an opportunity to attend the Champlain Housing Trust Cornerstone Luncheon, which was very successful. It had about 270 participants and raised a significant amount of money toward some of their service programs for their clients. I also attended a library program here in the auditorium, which was sponsored by the newer children's librarian, and it was on children's nervous systems. It was actually very interesting. A lot of educators were here, and I was very impressed with the amount of programming that goes on, both through the library as well as through other community groups. And then I did want to make a brief comment. Barb's aside here, but I know there was quite a bit of disruption on Garden Street for some of the businesses there, and I had a chance to drive through it fairly recently, and really kudos to the city team. It's a nice job, and I know there's some lighting that's held off for springtime just because of supply issues with the vendors, but it really looks great. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Andrew?
Sure, thanks, Tim. So I attended a bike ped committee meeting. They discussed the presentation they all made to us and agreed they're going to move forward working on signage and thinking about an education program, and they'll come back to us with that when they've developed it some more. They are refining their plan for integrating the Safe Routes to School task force into their committee, and they're going to present that to us in December. Along with Lori, attended a sextons meeting. I always learn something at those meetings. We have a really experienced crew of sextons. It's really something. And they went in detail through the cemeteries and the plots and all kinds of things. And it was very interesting. They also discussed signs. They wanted to put a couple of signs in the cemeteries, which I think is a good idea. And they'll be coming back to us too with that. It's not exactly city business, but I think relevant. I attended the VPIRG annual meeting, Vermont Public Interest Research Group. A lot of positive energy. They had an excellent year. Record high membership, record high contributions. Charity Clark was the keynote speaker. She spoke about all the federal lawsuits that Vermont is engaged in and is defending against, and spent some time talking about the polluter pay law that we passed that's being attacked by the federal government. She was a great speaker. And then I attended a presentation by an interesting group called the Dear Tomorrow organization. Dear Tomorrow. And they're about climate change, and they focus on having people write letters that are intended to be opened in the year 2050 to people that are close to them about climate change. I tried to do this, and I got about halfway through, and I have to say it was so incredibly emotional that I couldn't read my letter out loud. I just had to paste it into the little chat box in the text, chain that we are all, on the Zoom. I would really encourage folks to try and do this. And you can go to the website and you can see samples, but when you think about, say, writing to a child in 2050 about what their world might be like and what you're trying to do and your hopes and dreams for them at that point, given this climate crisis, it's, like I said, very emotional. And for me, it really was. So, yeah.
Thank you, Andrew. Lori?
So I attended an NRCC meeting that spent some time talking about the open space plan, master plan, which is in process, and talked about the timeline for that. The NRCC is very concerned about minimizing changes to Hubbard and maintaining the character of that. There's a lot of concern that once something's gone, we don't get it back. And we need to look at what the value is of the open spaces that we have for the future. So that was a lot of the conversation there. And then we had a conversation with a counselor, myself and Ann, which was a robust conversation with there were about 6 residents there, and it was pretty informative. Nothing big to share on that tonight. One thing was there was a request from one of the residents that when a report is made about a homeless encampment, that there be some kind of follow-up so that they know what's happened. They make a report, we're going to do something, and then because it takes a while to do anything for the process that we have, just some sort of report back that would let them know that this is in process and this is what's going to happen, so that, or to give them that information at the time so that they know that the loop's been closed. Had a Rec and Parks meeting, had a long conversation about the bike path and speed limits or regulations or codes of conduct. There was a discussion about an accountability agenda. There was a 14-point report that was done for Burlington on that, and how we might be able to incorporate some of that into what we're trying to do with preparing for what can potentially happen on the bike paths with increasing e-bikes and these motorcycles that are electric that are actually illegal to be on the path, but they're there. And in that regard, something very interesting happened on Sunday, living in Queen City Park, looking out my window, and 3 saunas went by on trailers. Saunas. 3 wood-heated saunas went by on trailers. And I was like, what is going on? Went down to Red Rocks Park. Well, the Parks and Rec sponsored a sauna social at Red Rocks Park. I said, why didn't I know about this? I would have signed up. Anyway, it was a fabulous event. They had 3 saunas that were wood-fired that and people were taking saunas and they were cool dipping in the lake, and they had bonfires going. It was just an amazing event. I think apparently it was promoted by the sauna companies, not internally. So I was like, what a great idea. Let's do this again and make it more known to the community. So that was kind of a cool thing. I'm like, I'm on the rec committee and I'm on the open space committee, and I had no idea.
Did you want to change it to conversation with a counselor in a sauna?
I think that would be great with bathing suits. And the Sexton's meeting also, there was a long conversation about the spelling of Eldridge, whether it's with an E or an I. It's spelt with an I on the sign, but historically it's all over the place. They settled on E. As Andrew said, they are working on language for a rules sign for the cemeteries, and they will be making a presentation to council about that. They have funds available to them to support it, so that's moving forward. And the question came up again about getting a cemetery administrator and how things are moving forward. That may come up in our work plan discussion later. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Lori. Ann?
Thank you. I too was at the Champlain Housing luncheon, and at my table, there seemed to be 3/4 of my table was people from South Burlington, and what I appreciated was to a person, they commented on City Center and on the development there and how they were appreciative of that and looking forward to further sort of work on that. kind of thing. With Lori, I participated in my second conversation with counselors, and I think Lori gave a good summary of that. He also did, in my former role as a social worker, he did good case management in terms of monitoring the discussion and responding to people and getting back to them. I also South Burlington 3C really was quite busy in the last week in terms of part of their role being to connect with the community and get people to the community, and to partner with Parks and Rec. And so there was some volunteers who helped with the Glow Walk that had like over 400 people participating in that. South Burlington C3 had 2 events in the last 2 days. They sponsored watch parties for the UVM soccer game, and did that in a way that it was at the Delta. Is that what it's called? It was at the Delta. The Delta was pleased because the number of people that came to their hotel, was double. There were over 100 people on Sunday, and what was sort of really, not only were they coming to South Burlington, but the executive director had reached out to South Burlington businesses, and so various businesses were donated food and things like that. And she made a connection with UVM, who also sort of put on social media about this. So in terms of a connection that way, and so it really was quite successful that way for something that was put together in 3 days. And in terms of that, we and the fledgling organization is already at 55% of its goal for a yearly membership, which I think is really good. And they're continuing to look for opportunities to promote the businesses in City Center.
Great. Thank you, Ann. I just want to mention that my wife and I went to see Mill Girls at St. Mike's a couple of Saturday nights ago. It was actually done 9 years earlier, and it was the departing production for their theatrical director. What an excellent production. If you don't know, it's about the women from the countryside, young women who migrated to Lowell, Massachusetts to work in the original mills that were there in the 1820s to the 1860s. And it's all told through, their stories are told through their own words, through their letters home. And then there's some music mixed in as well. So that was a really great historical thing to see. I went to a planning commission meeting where there were 2 major items of discussion. One was adaptive reuse of existing real estate, property, buildings, falling into categories of whether the building is conforming or non-conforming, and whether its use is conforming or non-conforming, and what leeway the planning commission could suggest in the LDRs for the repurposing of those buildings. What do they think they should allow? How many changes could they make to the building in order to make the use conforming? Or it was complicated, but they worked their way through it. They also talked about that section of Williston Road between Mills Ave and Cottage Grove, and it's a low-scale neighborhood, thinking about maybe some small changes to the zoning for that area, maybe to increase residential density. But both really good discussions. I also want to mention that I drove by East Terrace on Sunday and then took a visit and looked at the new construction going on for the retaining walls. If you weren't aware, that Channel 3 did a report. They did a report a couple of years ago how the neighbors were complaining about the walls crumbling apart, right? Because they were built 30 years ago by the city. And since then, the neighbors in the city have reached an agreement, signed some contracts, and a contractor has rebuilt, I would say, half the walls, and they are beautiful, really well done. And they're all set back just enough so they're out of the city right away. They belong solely to the neighbors in that area that have them on their property. So I think it takes a responsibility load off the city at that point. So just, if you have a chance, you're on, East Terrace, go take a drive down there and see what's going on. It's great. Also, I want to say, congratulations to UVM men's soccer for winning 2-0 against Bryant on Sunday at 1 p.m. Off they go to the NCAA playoffs again. Remember, they were last year's champions. That's really incredible news, and I hope they do a repeat. Helen Reilly sits on our airport commission. I wanted to briefly repeat to you what she wrote to me about their latest meeting. So I'm just going to read what she said. She said their finances are in excellent shape at the airport. They have a $4 million cash balance. Revenues from the parking garage are up 12%. They have a new restaurant and coffee shop that's about to open that's run by Kestrel. They have a coffee shop downtown and a business around here. That will provide more choices for the travelers. Phase 3 of their noise abatement is almost 100% complete, and Phase 4 is moving forward with adherence to new standards required by the FAA, which require additional sound testing. Now, the passenger numbers at the airport are the highest since 2019, largely due to larger planes. And with completion of that project next, to which we all went to that dinner last spring, right? There will be more convenient and usable space for more larger planes, which will probably sustain growth in more passenger numbers. And BTV is following the Blue Lightning Initiative, which trains personnel to identify potential traffickers and human trafficking and to report their suspicions to federal law enforcement. And for those people, there was a protest at the airport, I think last summer, about how ICE is using the airport. So she says that ICE officers are required to adhere to parking and checking in procedures just like the general public. No private rooms have been made available for their activities. They also are working on their future centralized driving system, which is basically the parking kiosk system when you enter it. And there's also a new aviation education center at the airport. It's open and will enable students to earn college credit and dual credit for high school. The curriculum is highly technical and includes aircraft assembly and rigging, sheet metal fabrication, advanced composites, avionics, and maintenance for piston and turbine engines. And the last thing I want to say is, if you haven't noticed on Dorset Street, as Chris Shaw said, the water tower is at equal height to the existing water tower. They just have, they have a lot of work to do, but the cap has to go on. The cap has been mostly built. It's on the ground. They're going to have to raise it up and attach it to the top. It's really fascinating. But Andy Brumbaugh has a moving GIF on the construction webpage for the city where he has a camera that's been taking pictures all along. So it's a time elapsed, set of pictures that runs you through, the escalation of the metal as it climbs up during the construction. So that's all. And look who's here. The city manager is here, Jesse Baker. Would you like to give us an update?
Sure, very quickly. Thank you to Steve for covering, and thank you for your patience. We had the first permanent superintendent search committee kickoff this evening from 5 to 7, but got done a few minutes early. So really thankful that the school board has included me in that process again, and we're off to a great start. The only other thing I want to mention is we are finalizing our budget proposal this week, and we'll have budget books on Friday for you all, and those will be posted online. If I know 2 of you would like a hard copy, if others would like a hard copy, just let me know. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Jesse. On to item 6, which is the consent agenda. We have, I think it's three items. We have the financial warrants, which is 6A. 6B, approve the submission of a loan application in the amount of $30,202,470 to the state revolving loan program for construction of the Bartlett Bay wastewater treatment facility reconstruction project. And 6C, receive the city staff's preliminary assessment of Governor Scott's Executive Order number 06-25. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Can we pull out item 6C for separate discussion?
Sure. So do you want to amend your motion to just A and B?
So amended.
Okay. You have a second? Okay, thank you. So we have a motion and a second for just approving 6A and 6B. Any discussion on those two? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that's approved. Now we'll go, you want to discuss 6C.
Yeah. Sorry, I did
Andrew,
read.
sorry to interrupt before you start. Paul, is one of these, are you on? Is one of these SB?
Yes, I am one of them.
Yes, you do have one of them. Great. Thank you. Pay attention.
Okay, so yeah, I read the memo and thanks. It was very thorough. And just to make sure and to summarize for the public and just make sure I'm reading it right, it seemed like the only material impact really is that for our EV ready charging standards, without more and subject to more discussion, I think the number and proportion of parking spaces would be impacted. So am I reading that right? That's basically the only impact we foresee at this point, Paul?
Basically, yes. So that's
Okay.
a state standard that we built on pulling the wire through the conduit. That's what our own local regulation did in the 2024. So for those who choose to revert to the 2020, it goes to all of the different 2020 standards, which has different R value standards and things like that. And then visibly, the requirement for EV chargers, regardless of whether they're ready or capable, was much lower in the 2020 CBs and RBs. And so it reverts to that, but that's out of our hands.
Okay, so thank you. So, I mean, it's, I think, good news that there's not that much potential impact on us, but I do have a couple of questions, a bunch of questions about this particular impact, and maybe there's three really. And I know in the cover memo you noted that there hasn't been really consideration of the validity of the order, but I'm wondering what we intend to do. Do we, without more, intend to follow it, or do we intend to wait to see what happens? That's kind of the first question. If we intend to follow it, then, well, I think we should discuss that as a council, honestly, and understand the arguments back and forth in terms of the validity. But if we conclude that we should follow it, then my follow-up question would be, can we change it? Can we change our LDRs to specifically reference some other standard, the 2024 standard, or just hard code the number of spaces in proportion to mimic what was in the 2024 code? So those are the questions.
I think the bigger question for me is the executive order even legal?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is it valid? Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't do anything until somebody decides in a court of law whether it's valid or not. I mean, that's just my opinion. But I mean, in the last batch of LDR changes that we had to adopt, they were handed down by the state legislature because they voted on it. This is not that. This is an EO. I have no idea whether it has any merit or not.
Well, so that's why I asked planning and zoning, and I guess it's a question for the DRB. Like, what do we intend to do as a city? And I'm asking staff that question.
I think what's sort of difficult about this, Councillor Chalnick, is that for the most part, the commercial building energy code and the residential building energy standards are their own state legislation. And so it is the builder's responsibility to put that into the land records when they build a new building, when they do an addition. South Burlington's relationship is really just the add-ons that we did, like the solar-ready roofs, which we believe still remain valid, and the installing solar on that. We don't really have our own direct mechanism to determine which one it should be, because their mandate is to record it in the land records, whichever the it is. And so the question of whether which one is valid is while we could question it, I'm not sure planning and zoning has the authority to make that choice.
So just to be clear, you're saying that notwithstanding, my hope that we, and I think Tim's, that we don't follow it, your perspective is that we're kind of constrained to at this point?
Well, let's say we had not adopted our LDR adder of the solar-ready roofs and the solar zone. We wouldn't have any reference whatsoever in our regulations to the code, because the code is a state rule. So people's responsibility, builders' responsibility, would be to submit it recorded in the land records, and upon demonstration of that, we would issue our CO, our certificate of occupancy. our reference to it is really on the adder part. We could certainly, we didn't really look at it from that angle with our city attorney, but we certainly could look a little deeper into it as to whether we have any independent authority to determine which one is we consider to be valid. We were really looking at effect on South Burlington of the reversion, assuming it is valid. That's really the angle we were looking at.
I'm going to just try and paraphrase. So I think we established the only material impact is a number and proportion of parking spaces for EV ready. And you're saying for that, it sounds like what you're saying is we're kind of constrained to follow the 2020 standard. Is that fair?
I guess what I would say the most fair thing is we were looking at it through the angle of let's assume that it is valid. What are the effects on South Burlington? We did not assess whether we have any independent authority to determine its validity.
Okay, so I would love us to do that assessment honestly, and depending on that, if we determine it is valid, again, can we then pass our own, a further ordinance to ensure reference, just hard code into the EV ready standards what we thought we had.
If that's council's wish, we can absolutely work with legal counsel and get an opinion back to you on that.
Okay.
So that, I would like 3 head nods to do that. That is a pretty big legal lift. So
which part is big, you think, Jesse?
Colin, do you want to weigh in here? So I think that this is, you're talking about the legality of an executive order. So I don't mean to talk for our city attorney, but I think what he's going to say is that that's going to require us to look at other legal work that's being done in the state right now around the legal authority of this executive order.
There's got to be other communities that have the same question, right?
I think, yes, this is Colin McNeil, city attorney. I think a lot of communities do have the same question. And a lot of communities are probably waiting on others to tell them whether this is legal or not. I know that there have reviewed some challenges to its authority that are pretty extensive. I've done a lot of digging and to figure out whether that the executive order is valid or not. As Paul was saying, we approach this with the eye of seeing, okay, what are the impacts, assuming it's valid, not looking at the validity of it. And so it would take certainly a change of viewpoint if we are then looking at, okay, what is the validity of an executive order that the governor issues on impacts on legislative acts?
So instead of doing that very heavy lift, maybe we could wait to see what happens with the state legislative council, which I understand is also looking at this question, and piggyback on some of other work. But can we, in the meantime, I think hopefully do something that's not that heavy, which is just hard code into our ordinance what we thought we already had from the 2024 CBs. It's all there, right? It should just be a copy and paste into our ordinance. Hopefully that wouldn't be a heavy lift.
I think it would require going through the process of coming from the planning commission to amend the LDRs. We have to go through that entire process. Frankly, I haven't looked into the fact to what the legislature has done with this legislation, and just referred to it and tried to follow it. And
sorry, George is on the screen. We were waving at George there for a second. Sorry.
Yeah, it did distract me a little bit. Very cute. And so we haven't. I would like some time to think about how to best do that.
Okay. Yeah.
I have a follow-up question, just so I understand. This review was done under the assumption that the EO is enforceable. Between now and the time that it is determined whether or not it's enforceable, if we hold the position that it's not enforceable, does that get us in trouble if it turns out to be enforceable? And vice versa. In this interim period, what are the repercussions of saying we're not going to abide by it because we don't think it's enforceable, or we're enforcing it because we think it's enforceable?
I think those kind of go to the core question. I think that we would look at it. What would the governor and what would the administration do if we weren't following and complying with the executive order? What would be the consequences of doing that? Not just in this area, but in any area. So, what authority does the government have, or there are likely consequences to not complying with a lawfully issued executive order, whether it's funding or whether it's who knows what the ramifications could be. But I'm just guessing. I'm snowballing. I can't state specifically what the consequences would be.
Does Dylan say that those directives have to come from the legislature and not mention the fact that the governor has this ability? Do we know? Do you know?
Our authority comes from the state. Whether that's the executive branch or the legislative branch, I think that's a whole. That's a great question, but it's, we're granted the authority that the state grants us, and whether that comes exclusively from the legislature or if I believe that it's likely in instances where we have an executive order issued by a governor, we're obligated to comply with that as well. But whether executive order is unlawful, that's a different story. So I think that the consequence of following the executive order would likely be that we apply the 2020 legislation as opposed to the 2024 legislation in those areas that Councilor Chalnick was speaking to.
So we've certainly seen our share of executive orders, particularly at the federal level, that are invalid and that have been challenged. This one feels to me, unfortunately, a little bit like that, a little bit of overreach. And I guess I'm wondering whether if we were to wait and say, look, for the meantime, we're going to, wait to see what happens with the challenges, but we're not going to abide by it. I would think what the consequences would be is some applicant would come before the DRB and challenge the conclusions of the DRB in court, and then they suss out the validity of the order in court. Wouldn't that be what would happen?
That could certainly be the outcome of a specific project if we applied the 2024 legislation and the applicant was trying to comply with the 2020 regulations or legislation. That could be the outcome. They could appeal our determinations there.
And also correct me if the once the planning commission passes something, if we then also pass it, it's effective, right, as of the date it came from the planning commission. Is that right? What's the effective date again?
I can answer that one. It's effective the date that your warning of a public hearing is published in the newspaper.
Our warning. Okay, effective our warning.
Your
Okay.
warning. Yeah.
Okay. So, if we move kind of quickly to, I would say, correct this, right, or fill this hole, it wouldn't be that long, really, before our laws are what we thought they were, regardless of the validity of the ordinance. And I guess I would hope that we all agree we should do that regardless as quickly as possible.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, again, I would bring up it sounds like there's going to be a challenge regardless, and that may happen at the legislative level or it certainly will come up in the town or city level at some point with the examples you brought up, Andrew. But in terms of our ongoing discussion of workload and priorities, to change the work plan of the planning commission right now before we sort of wait and see what the implications may be and just put this on a work schedule to look at versus fast track it. I don't really see the need to do that. My own opinion, because I think that's been kind of a consistent theme I've seen, is just kind of a constant reaction to it largely affecting the planning commission work plan. Separate issue, just to clarify, Paul, while you're on, and thank you for responding to my questions on the EO. I'm assuming from what you said in response that it's common knowledge about the stretch goal that is in statute. Is that accurate?
Can you explain what you mean by common knowledge on it? I guess not a lot of people are following statutes in general, so.
Well, just that if you are subject to projects that would have to comply with that code, there's knowledge that there is a stretch code. It wasn't clear to me when that first came to me that that was sort of an
Okay.
adjective or actually a statute, and it looks like it's in statute.
It is in statute. So there is a stretch code in the 2020. It's very clearly in there for those who are reading the code, builders and so on and so forth. It's been in our regulations since around that time that in South Burlington, the stretch code applies. It's also relatively common in that all applications that go through Act 250 since that time had to meet the stretch code because Act 250 standard is best available technology. And so the stretch has been applied. So it's in South Burlington pretty known that the 2020 code utilized the stretch code.
Thank you for that clarification. Yeah. But back to the prior comment, I guess my question would be, if a majority of the council wants to fast track this through the Planning Commission, what will get slow walked as a result? And will we have that opportunity as a council to make that decision?
Yeah, I kind of feel like there are other communities, cities and towns that have the same questions we do, and I don't want to take any action that's going to be wasteful in the future when we find out that most of those orders are not valid anyway. So I would like to wait and see what the legislature does. And I just think that it's just too broad-handed by the governor to just go, boom, here you go. After not.
What if it turns out to be valid and we've done all these projects?
Well, I mean, there's a whole whiplash that's been going on at the federal level, right?
Yeah.
And just back and forth. And, I think half the time, except in those cases where enforcement actions happen at the federal level, right, because of executive orders, right? I don't know what the enforcement level is here, or if there even is one.
No, it'll be applicant by applicant. Does this need to go through the Planning Commission? We can't just fix this at the council level?
If you're discussing a change to the land development regulations that would somehow incorporate the energy code, then yes. If it was to be a separate ordinance, then that would be council directly. I think, not to put words in your mouth, Colin, but we've not really explored what authority municipality has to have its own energy code standards, which would this essentially potentially might be.
We have not, correct?
So it gets even more complex than we thought it would.
Well, no, so it has to go through the Planning Commission. I don't know. I mean, I hear you, Tim. I think we're, and I hear you, Elizabeth, but we need to, I hope, be nimble enough to be able to react to significant changed circumstances, right? We're not, at least I'm not suggesting we, on a whim, ask the Planning Commission to rearrange things for desires, but to do something which protects important legislation that we all passed that we thought was really important in the face of what I think and what feels like what many people think is real overreach. I think we need to be nimble enough as a community to be able to react to that and not be so kind of wedded to schedules and plans to not be able to be flexible enough to do that. And I am fearful, Tim, that if we don't do this in parallel, we'll lose a big opportunity.
How much work is it to come up with a proposal that would tell us what our choices are and how long that might take?
Well, I think as Paul just mentioned, there's probably a lot on, I don't know, I don't want to speak for Paul on the legwork of what it takes to come up with our own energy code. But it would take a little bit of research on my end just to make sure that we could actually draft our own energy code.
No, that's not what I'm suggesting. So I guess, and honestly, I'm happy to draft it. Just draft an insert to our current EV ready paragraph that's already in the LDRs that incorporates what we thought it incorporated. I think it would be actually a really easy thing to do.
I appreciate your commitment. I have to say, I don't think we're the right body to question the legality of, and we're in the middle of we're starting our budget process. And I think that we as a council need to focus on that, and that there are other statewide organizations that are better poised to, if they choose, to take this executive order and question the validity of changing that. And to mount a legal challenge is, I don't think this is I don't think we in South Burlington are the most effective primary plaintiff in that fight. And I want to echo what Elizabeth said, sort of, hearing what this might impact in terms of workload and time for the staff. It's not something that I would support. And while I appreciate your willingness to sort of draft something, then we're going to have to spend council time, doing all of that when we have a serious budget that we need to grapple with. And so I would not support going further.
Can I try and allay your fears, Anne? I'm not suggesting we challenge the legality. That was the first thing I said. It wouldn't take any council time. It wouldn't be any policy decisions because we already know what we want. It's already in our LDRs. We've already decided as a council and a planning commission exactly what rules we want. So all this is a cut and paste that I'm willing to do, and the planning commission would get it, and it would be exactly what they've already passed. And we would get it, and it would be exactly what we've already passed. It should be a really simple lift. It won't interfere with budget discussions.
So what would be the purpose?
Oh, the purpose would be to ensure that our rules are the rules we want them to be, regardless of the validity of the order. So it's not, it's without having to challenge the order, it fixes our rules to be what we thought they were.
I'm not sure I agree with you that it is that simple and that would in fact
Well, we could see, right? I mean, I think it is, and I really do. I think it would be that simple.
A quick question for Paul. Paul, in terms of opportunity lost because of this executive order, in terms of what we have in the pipeline right now, how many or what kind of projects are there that would be impacted by this change to the 2020 code as opposed to 2024, specifically to the EV charging issue? Do we have a number of projects that this is going to impact the way it is now, or what's that pipeline?
So we've only had a handful of projects so far that have submitted under the code that the EV, under the 2024, that from a site plan perspective, that would have triggered the greater number of EV charging. So there's not very many. Whether those folks who've already done that design would choose to not implement it, I don't know, because the executive order does say you can comply with the 2024 if you choose. As for what's in the pipeline, we don't presently have any major applications that would be using it, but we don't know what we're going to get in a few months' time.
Okay, thank you.
And then the rest of the code in terms of the building energy standards that are different from 2020 to 2024, that would apply for any permits for new construction that are taking place now.
I wouldn't be opposed to having Andrew write up what he thinks could make what we attributed to the 2024 stretch code applicable to the 2020 stretch code and bring it forward and then see so that it's ready if we need it, but also we can see if then the next step is complicated or simple and decide whether or not to do it. That would be something that could be done without any staff or council time, and we could then revisit.
So you're
Another day.
suggesting that have Andrew write up what he's proposing, right? And then review that at a future meeting?
That's what I was suggesting.
Okay. Jesse?
So, Paul, that's talk to us about that process of the council sending specific language directly to the planning commission, not through staff.
I can send it to Paul.
The city charter provides that the planning commission's work plan is that which is laid out in statute and that which the council gives it. Typically, the council gives a subject area to the planning commission, but the charter doesn't specify that.
So that's what the five of you need to decide. You know, I think you know my position that staff is your scribes or your lawyers or your policy advisors. You all can decide to go a different way if it meets that pathway to the planning commission. It's not, Andrew, it's not the email chain of it. It's what is the role of your professional staff and what is the role of your policymakers.
Yeah, but I think it's okay, Jesse, for legislatures like us to do some lifting. I think that's okay.
I'm just stating my opinion. The five of you can decide on how you would like to move forward.
That's what policymakers do, and I happen to have a lot of training in this area. I've done this my whole life. It's what legislatures do.
So I hear that Elizabeth and Ann and I are reticent to
I'm
push.
no.
A clear no, right? I wanted to wait to see what other communities are doing. Lori, what's your opinion?
I would be open to having Andrew draft something, but if it's only two people, that doesn't go anywhere.
Why don't you write it up anyway and be prepared for if we see what happens? Okay, is that good? All right. So do we still need a motion to approve 6C?
It was just receipt of the memo. You don't need to approve the.
Oh, but it was part of the consent agenda.
Yep.
That's all. Okay. Well,
Given that you've now had
yes.
30 minutes of conversation, I think you should vote to receive it.
Yes. So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. That's
And did we
unanimous.
vote on the first consent agenda?
We did. We did those earlier. Yep. So now we're on to item 7. We're a little bit behind. Receive the annual report from the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission with Charlie Baker, the Executive Director, and Chris Shaw, our South Burlington representative. And do you have another title, Chris, there as well?
Past chair.
Okay, past chair.
Past chair.
Okay. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Thank you for the time on your agenda.
And I also serve with Paul Connor on the Planning Advisory Committee as our subcommittee, and he does a wonderful job. He is the chair of the Planning Advisory Committee. I'm sorry, I was saying Paul Connor I serve with as well on the Planning Advisory Committee at CCRPC as the board representative, and he's the chair of the Planning Advisory Committee this year.
And he also said Paul does a great job chairing that committee. Charlie Baker here for the record, Executive Director of the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission, and thank you again for the time on your agenda. So this is my annual customer service call. And you got in your packet a few-page report. I'm going to skim through that briefly and happy to take any questions or feedback you may have for me. The first page gives you some background on the Regional Planning Commission and the board makeup and how we turn local dollars invested in dues and match to bring in over $7.6 million of federal and state funds last year. And at the bottom, you see your committee and board representatives, and thank you to Chris and Paul, who were already mentioned, but Tom and Dave Wheeler and Steve for their work on our committees. We appreciate it. On the second and most of the third page are specific projects that we worked on with the city last year. I'm not sure, you may win the award for the most projects in one fiscal year this year. Congratulations. And I'm not going to read all of these in detail, but we've been working on active transportation plan with you, the city center parking management plan, bike ped scoping on Patchen Road and Shelburne Road crossings, culverts, brownfields, water quality, energy planning, and a little bit more technical assistance. Happy to take any feedback on those specific projects from last year. And where we can, we've also included how much the consultant budgets were, so you can get a sense of what kind of return you're getting. Not seeing anyone catch my eyes. Oh, sorry.
Really excited about the CCRPC's, like sponsorship and co-administration of the Communication Union District for Chittenden County, right? And the accomplishment that they had with extending fiber to a lot of residents that were underserved for internet speeds by, contracting with Fidium and other providers. That's just really great work. Michael Vance, incredible chair of that Union District. I really appreciate his hard work and his deep knowledge of telecommunications. It's really amazing. So that's a really good piece of work there, and I think it'll make a lot of people happy who they couldn't stream Netflix reliably, probably.
And maybe other purposes as well.
Oh, it could be, yeah.
Yeah. The bottom of the third page has projects that are in this year's work program that were may have just started. Not familiar with the status of every one of these, but Wilson Road, Mary Street intersection scoping, looking at Americans with Disability Act transition plan, a plan for sidewalk and shared use maintenance, and active transportation plan part 2, and then EV charging in existing multi-unit buildings. So those projects, some of them may have started, some of them may not have started yet, but just so you know what we'll be reporting on next year. And then you have a lot of projects on the bottom of the fourth page. Again, you may have the highest number in the county of things that are in our transportation improvement program and typically mirrored in the state's capital transportation program. And so you can kind of run through that. I don't know, you probably know more details about these projects than I do, but you can see the dollar amounts and at least what from the most recent capital transportation program at the state level where the schedule was. Those things do move though, so don't take any dates there. If they haven't already happened, it could change. And then the last 2 or 3 pages are regional activities. We've been spending a lot of time the last 2 years on our regional plan, the future land use map that deals with that Act 250 reform legislation from a couple of years ago, housing issues, energy, walking, biking, clean water, emergency management. Yeah, Tim, thank you for mentioning the Communications Union District work, brownfields. And the newest thing that we're working on is a regional transportation safety action plan. The federal government has made a lot of funds available for safety projects if you have one of these safety action plans. So we're rather than asking each town to do it, we did it region-wide. So hopefully that makes all of our municipalities eligible to apply for those federal funds, which are typically 100% funds to address safety issues. So just one little highlight there. If there's no feedback on any of those. I also just want to mention a couple other things. Thank you to those that attended. We had an elected officials forum a few weeks ago. We'll try to do that maybe 3 times a year. Hopefully, I got to check my notes from that meeting and do some more follow-up on it, but get something scheduled. Second thing to mention is that our annual work program application will come out this Friday. Applications are due later in January, and I'm sure your staff is very good at following up on that, and I'm sure they'll bring some projects to you. We do ask the elected body to kind of bless those projects because they do have some budget implications when you have to budget for match. And then third thing I want to mention is that we are doing a legislative breakfast December 10th in the morning. If you probably already saw save the date on that. I hope you did. And I'm all ears, or happy to get any emails if you have some suggestions of things that we ought to talk about with our legislators when we have them in the room in a few weeks. And
Maybe one of the items asked at that legislative breakfast will be the validity of the EOs from the governor's office.
I was guessing that was going to come up.
Quick question about the meetings that you had with different communities heads, or
Yep.
The way it was set up the first time, we could all go because I guess it was educational.
Yep.
The second time, only two of us could go because of the nature of it. If it could be arranged so that more of us could go in the future, that would be awesome. But I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, we'll talk about that some more. It does cuts both ways. And we don't want to create any issues for you after the fact. If some issue came up and you started to debate it, not that would ever happen, but hypothetically.
I felt that discussion was really constructive to really listen to the Burlington counselors, right? And hear them describe in detail their knowledge of the issues that they're facing with the opioid, addiction problem and the homeless. And that, I mean, we don't talk about that very much because I don't think we're as affected, but recently we were affected, right?
Yep.
By virtue of what happened in the Marcotte school. But, some of those counselors know a lot. Right. And I was amazed at, and I was grateful to have that conversation, especially with that, because, people out in the more rural areas, right, they're just not as affected, and it affects everybody.
Yeah.
So and there are a lot of issues that there were to talk about, which is we could have gone on for another hour easily, but we ran out of pizza. That was the problem.
I don't think that was a fact, but
We didn't
and I'm not going to say who took one home, but no, I think there is a lot of stuff, and I think it is just incredibly valuable to have those sharing, because there's lots of times there's things, we're dealing with that too, or we dealt with it last year, here's what we learned, and then and sometimes you get the thing that you haven't dealt with, like I think we heard from one of the rural towns about some goat issues, but so yeah, and then you count your blessings for things you don't have to deal with. So yeah, we'll keep those going for a while as long as the elected officials find it useful. So stay tuned for that.
And there was like some cross-constructive criticism, right? And then some also very supportive things that were said about each other's communities, which was great.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to hear feedback from other people sometimes when they have their own opinion.
Yeah, and we did. I think maybe it was a select board member in Jericho who said we should spend a little bit of time talking about what's going well in your community, and give a little brag time. So I thought that was also very beneficial because so often it's easy to talk about what the issue of the day is, what we're working on or struggling with. But it was nice to hear some positive things and brag a little bit too for each of the communities.
Council, have any other questions or comments at all? No?
Chris?
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming tonight. Sorry to make you wait an extra 15 minutes, but...
Trust me, I've done worse.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm headed to Burlington next, so
Thanks.
you'll be nothing.
Thank you both.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
All right, moving on to item number 8, which is received the Town Meeting TV Annual Report and Fiscal Year 27 Budget Request with Jordan Mitchell, Co-Director of Operations and Digital Archivist. Come on down. Are you Jordan? I'm Jordan. All right. Make sure the bright green light is on the base of that microphone and pull that microphone up near your voice. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. My name is Jordan Mitchell. I'm the co-director of operations for Town Meeting TV. And I am here for my annual request on behalf of Town Meeting TV as part of requesting funds from the city's FY27 budget, and also just to hear how things have been going with Town Meeting TV, and to give an overview of what we did on the last fiscal year. So Town Meeting TV submits this report in your packet as part of our visit briefing the City Council on Town Meeting TV operations. So we are requesting inclusion in your annual budget and just want to hear from you how we can better serve your needs. So a little bit of backstory, so CCTV, Center for Media and Democracy, is the parent organization, the nonprofit that houses Town Meeting TV, the cable access channel. which you see us in this capacity as we, at your city council meetings, recording them and archiving them. There's also the CCTV Archives, which is our archival arm of the organization, and CCTV Productions, which is our fee-for-hire arm of the organization. Town Meeting TV serves not just South Burlington, but Burlington, Essex, Essex Junction, Williston, Winooski, and Colchester. Service and coverage are allocated based on cable subscriber numbers through what is referred to in your packet as a contract. Town Meeting TV provides gavel-to-gavel, non-edited coverage of municipal meetings and community events, as well as provides media tools and internships to members of the community. And then CCTV Archives is a public repository of those meetings and events that happen in the community going back to the 1980s. And then CCTV Productions provides high-quality meeting, event, and other coverage. And the fees for those services support the organization's mission and other work. So last fiscal year, we produced and supported 1,657 programs for all of our member communities, and 351 of those programs was municipal meeting coverage. For South Burlington, the contract with the trustees stipulates production of 5 meetings a month and at least 1 general program per month, so something that's not municipal meeting coverage. Last year, we produced 53 city council and DRB meetings. We also, since April 2025 of last year, have had with the City of South Burlington a separate contract with CCTV Productions for additional meeting coverage and archiving and hybrid meeting support. And that covered 19 Board of Abatement, Planning Commission, Library Trustees, and Board of Civil Authority meetings. Outside of the municipal meeting coverage, you may have seen Town Meeting TV in the community. Last year, we covered 18 general programs, so we really were in your community more than once a month, which is great. Programs included things like the Spooktacular Block Party, the Street Scan Scooters, the Police Chief Community Listening Session, and numerous Juneteenth events, a 4th of July protest, the Flyby 5K race, and a ribbon cutting ceremony that celebrated the new GMT bus service on Market Street. And that just kind of scratches the surface. If you feel there are other program areas we're not covering, we would encourage you to reach out. You can either reach out to me, or you can reach out to Corey, who is the South Burlington trustee who represents you all in the Town Meeting TV Trustees. So to talk a little bit about funding, Town Meeting TV is funded in large part by cable subscribers of Comcast, and if you were to be in Burlington, Burlington Telecom. Municipal contributions help meet the increased demand for services to offset the decline in cable revenue. This year for South Burlington, we're requesting an FY27 municipal contribution of $25,525, which is a 5% increase from last year, for general Town Meeting TV operations. We are also requesting for CCTV Productions a $28,275 contribution, which is no increase from last year or from this past year, for additional meeting hybrid support. In total, $53,800. And just to talk a little bit about our other revenue sources, cable revenue continues to decline. It declined 9% in the last year, but we're only asking municipalities for a 5% increase. So how do we make up the other parts? Great question. Town Meeting TV works with our nonprofit CCTV for fundraising, grant development, and advocacy. Town Meeting TV is a member of VAN, or the Vermont Access Network, which is a coalition of 23 public access centers in Vermont. VAN, for the last 2 legislative sessions, has received funding from the Secretary of State's office that started at $1 million. And then this past legislative session is $1.35 million in base Senate funding in the Secretary of State's office. We'll be working with them to increase that to $2 million by fiscal year 2028. We also are expanding our fee-for-service work with CCTV Productions to continue to work with municipalities to continue to record and archive other meetings. Lastly, as always, I want to thank our dedicated staff who are here every night in the back of the room. You know, you have Travis Washington, and he's been here for a couple years now, and you know, the work can't be done without people like Travis and the rest of our staff. So thank you. That's my presentation. I welcome any questions or comments you may have.
Great, thank you. Very appreciative of services from Town Meeting TV, and the candidate for it are coming up.
Yes, elections.
Aren't they?
They
Do
are.
we have anybody on the sitting here that's going to be on a candidate? At least one or two? Okay. Two? No? Okay, just one. Okay.
Well, we look
And
forward
then
to
somebody
seeing.
else that we don't know. Right.
Right.
Okay. Great. And I just have a couple of questions, and then I'll let other counselors. So you have a historical basis of recordings that are all on some sort of tape, I would assume, or hard drive, right? And are they backed up sufficiently in case of a fire? Are they backed up into a cloud at all, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. So everything currently is born digital, meaning it's only ever a digital file. So we record it into an MP4 file, a video file. That does get backed up. So we have our own server, which is actually, if you're familiar with the other public access center in Burlington, the Media Factory, we share server space with them. We share a server with them, which is then backed up to a second server, and then that's backed up to like cold storage, Amazon Glacier storage. So it is backed up redundantly. So, and our server called our disk shelf is managed by an external company. So they let us know if like our server goes down, or we can retrieve files within a certain amount of time. If our server suddenly stops saving files, we can go back and retrieve things. So we do back it up, and we also have things in place to make sure that something doesn't happen. In terms of if there's a fire, we also have we have 5,000 tapes and 5,000 DVDs that have the older meetings dating from the 80s to like the early 2010s. And we've been digitizing all of that. We've digitized most of the DVDs, so that stuff is all saved as digital files. The DVDs, the physical DVDs themselves, we just kind of hold on to. And then the tapes, we're maybe a little more than halfway through digitizing those. So in the unfortunate event of a fire, and it would all go up. Just we don't have fire suppression services for that stuff, but that would be nice, but it's very costly, and we have a larger collection for a public access center, so we're digitizing that stuff as the public requests it. So if there's stuff in our archives you want us to save sooner than later, let us know. But otherwise, our current stuff saved and backed up. The stuff that's on analog format, we're working the best we can.
Remember that Toy Story 2 was saved by one woman animator who took the DVD home of the entire animation sequences because it hadn't been completed yet, and they lost everything on their main server because of whatever happened. And she said, "But here you go."
I have heard that. Yes,
that's a true story, scary story. So I see that your revenue from Burlington Telecom and Comcast keeps declining because those are declining numbers based upon the number of people that subscribe to television broadcast over those systems, right, as opposed to streaming services, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and and there's no other revenue model that's allowed federally for you other than that, right?
Correct. Currently, we've looked in the legislature if we could do maybe a different sort of poll attachment tax. At the time, the legislature wasn't quite looking to add a tax to Vermonters, so that didn't quite work out. There's also, we've been asked, could we tax the internet? Because we live stream these meetings on YouTube. You access them through our website. There's a lot of legal issues with things you can and can't tax. So we have explored other options, but currently cable revenue is our main source, which is also how we exist, how public access exists in Vermont.
But the state did end up giving you an increase, right, to 0.35 million, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's split across all of the 23 access centers. So when you split it up, it's a little less, but it does help to offset. And that's, a big thanks to the Secretary of State's office. They see the value of not just having these meetings, but also archiving them so that they're available to the public. So thinking not just the written record, the meeting minutes, but also having it available to watch, and to maybe, if something wasn't quite captured in the minutes, you can go back and see it. So yeah, that's been increasing and will continue to increase the next couple of years as we continue to evaluate that.
Well, the state is willing to tax, because just in the last month or so, when I unplugged my car from the charging station, boom, these 2 new line items have popped up for state taxes, 2 taxes, and I wasn't aware that that was going to happen. Granted, it's not very much, on my 42 cents, it was like a penny, 2 pennies here, 1 penny there, but yeah, there are revenues that they can tax if they want to. So, any comments from councilors other than me? Sure.
Question, does the city decide which meetings, because I looked at the list and it was curious to me that the library trustee meetings were included. Is that by statute?
By statute.
Okay, so the meetings that are on there are all required by statute.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we started that in April for the last 4 meetings, and we've been continuing that since. So, yeah.
And what was our contribution for last year? This year, the request is 25,525. What was last year?
For Town Meeting TV, it was 5% less. What that number is,
Okay,
I don't know,
so
23 or thousand something. So it's,
Okay.
yeah, the 25,525 is a 5% increase from last year. But that's a good question. And then the other number is not an increase. The 28,275 for CCTV Productions is the same rate. CCTV Productions did not increase their hourly rate this fiscal year.
Any other comments by councilors? So our job is to receive this report, right, and integrate this request into the budget process. And have you already, is that already done pretty much? Yep. Or, okay. Yeah.
Could I just add one more thing?
Please.
To Jordan's last point, Travis is a rock star and he is never allowed to leave. As are, which he's rolling his eye. No, he's not even making eye contact with me back there. As are all the professionals who come and do, especially our special events. That's a huge addition for our community. So thank you for that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you again. If there's questions, let me know, and we'll see some of you as town meeting day approaches. So thank you again.
I've been here so long, I remember when Charlie was recording with a big camera down at the old city hall. I don't know if you guys, you're too young to remember that. All right.
And he still is with us. He still records, just not South Burlington. He mainly does the Burlington NPA, the neighborhood assembly.
Great. Well, thank you for coming tonight. Appreciate it. Appreciate Town Meeting TV. And I'm sure that the candidate looks forward to going to a 6:30 live broadcast. Last year was a really fun time, and the interviewer was really good too. So, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Geez, Tim, do you remember when Nat Ayers was doing it also? Yeah, that's going back even further.
Let's go. You're way back. All right. Going on to item number 9, which is receive a presentation on the city's parking management plan, the CPMP, and consider accepting the plan in substantially the same form as presented, with Alana Blanchard, Community Development Director, and Jonathan Slayson, Managing Consultant at RSG. Good evening.
Thank you very much.
Were you with RSG way back when they worked on the Hadley Road, Meadow Road, Farrell Street, 3-way intersection, and the counting of the cars? And
I was counting cars as of 2003.
Yep.
No, what year
That was about the time. Yeah. I lived in that corner, and thank you for your work. The community still appreciates that one way. So.
Thank you. I think Jonathan has a fairly thorough presentation that he's going to go through. I just wanted to preface this by saying that it's really exciting to watch City Center change. It's been amazing to have new businesses moving in. It's very different from where the community was a few years ago, even last year. And now with the South Burlington City Center Collaborative, we're having conversations with people who are having conversations about with new businesses coming in before they move in. And what are they concerned about? They're concerned about parking, and they're concerned about on-street parking. So this is, a big issue for any downtown, and it's great that we are getting ahead of it with this project that was approved. And so RSG has done a lot of work reaching out to different stakeholders in the community, and I'm excited to have you hear about the project and the management plan.
Great. Thank you, Alon. Now you can hear me. So again, my name is Jonathan Slayson from RSG, and we'll go through a couple slides. I think we'll make this informal, answer any questions that may come up. It's about 10 slides of some content, and then I think we have enough time for some Q&A. Does that sound good? Right, so good, the screen is working. The overview is where we'll start, and then discuss really the PMPs, the parking management plan. I'll refer to as the plan, the parking management plan, the PMP. It's all the same thing. And then will be ideas toward implementing the PMP, and then some Q&A. So there are some graphics here. Not only are they there just to kind of illustrate, we're studying the large city center area, which is encompassing as far west as the U-Mall, and then it goes toward Heinsberg Road on the east. It stretches north of Williston Road and then down south, just kind of at the San Remo end on Dorset. So that's really where we're focusing along the city center, and I'll be referring to the city center core, which is really Dorset Street to Heinsberg to Williston. So that kind of center area bounded. So we're not crossing Dorset, we're not crossing Williston. So that's kind of our study area, if you will. First off is we're going to review what's in this plan. Why create the plan, what parking was accounted for within the plan, and then how will those spaces be managed. This chart, we've got many other charts, and there's an appendix that I think you have access to in your materials, which probably is quite lengthy, but it goes into some of the background on the travel modeling that was done for parking. This is just one little screenshot of something that was done that analyzes a whole year of data every hour for a weekday and a weekend for every day of the week and every month of the year. And what we were able to do is then demonstrate where parking changes its demand. And in this case, this little graphic's just simply showing that when we manage the on-street parking, we're going to see some demand rise in the off-street locations. So we have a graphic that illustrates that a little bit more clearly. This is just kind of a teaser, if you will. Now first, why create the plan? We've actually got a fair amount of parking in our study area. We've got somewhere around 10,000 parking spaces within a 15-minute walk of City Hall. Now that sounds like a lot because it frankly is, but not every parking space is as attractive or as useful to all the land uses in the area. What we realize is that the use does vary widely. Many of us, we all know the areas with a lot of parking demand today, and those areas are probably going to remain in high demand. We also have a lot of changes afoot. For years, we had different areas with maybe greater intensity around the U-Mall, and then now, today, that's a little bit more available. So we have our activities in the city center, they're changing. And we obviously are now in a new building, and the city center core, we've seen a dramatic amount of change in the land use. And so we're seeing new demands arise for our parking. Now, what we're focused on is identifying what's going to happen as we fully occupy all the structures that have been built today. And that's really what this plan is intended to do for us, is give us ideas on how to manage the supply of parking as the demand starts to occur and all the tenants are occupied of all of that available space. So we're really getting ahead of the curve, which is a great place to be. We're not in a situation of reaction. So what we've found is that in the absence of managed parking, and we're looking at the on-street parking supply, is that those spaces are not going to be available for those users that are looking for that quick 1 to 2 hour parking need. particularly during the busy parts of the weekdays. I think many of us have already kind of seen now the parking become quite busy on Market Street, Garden Street during some of those weekday working hours. And what's happening is that some users potentially could have space available to them maybe off the street that would be more appropriate for their longer term parking needs. So individuals that might be parking for 2+ hours, we would really want to find other ways to move them off of outside of those premium on-street spaces. That would be in front of City Hall or in front of the restaurants, in front of the retail spaces that are going to occupy the ground floor. The objective that's on the screen is that we're looking to have this percentile of occupancy, the amount of spaces that are full. We're looking for 1 space for every 10 spaces to be empty at all times. That way, you're not circling the block. You don't have to go and turn around and look for that 1 spot. You can just go in your direction of travel and find that 1 spot along the block face. That's the ideal supply and demand that we are looking to optimize. And we've worked with in Winooski, we've worked in Burlington for trying to find that sweet spot. And in many cases, pricing and time limits are the 2 major parts of a parking management plan to try to get to that sweet spot. Now, the city center, as I said, we're ahead of the problem right now. We want to identify where we want to go as a city, and these goals help us articulate how we want to manage our parking supply. First and foremost, we want to enable visitors to have that flexibility and that ability to park once and then walk to other destinations. So if I want to visit the library and then go get a coffee, I want to park in that 1 spot and not have to feel like I have to move my vehicle. That way we have that park once philosophy. Then we will be responsive to changes in parking demands. We realize that this parking management plan and what we're going to probably put in from day 1 won't be the permanent solution. Things are going to change, and so we need to be responsive to that. We also need to be responsive that we may not get it right from the day 1 on the pricing or the time limits or some of these other components of this. So we need to design a system that will be responsive and will allow us to pivot. We also want to design this in a fiscally responsible manner. That way we require minimum additional support. That means we're looking to have no impact on the grand list once this system gets up and running. Ideally, be self-supporting and maybe even revenue positive. Continued support for the city center core, and then redevelopment of city center as we look to, I saw the LDRs and continued redevelopment in this core. We have redevelopment of our other parcels in that greater study area. But we also may consider how San Remo Drive and areas adjacent to the city center area may benefit from a parking management plan. So we have in parts of the implementation strategy how the demand will be managed and how we will be reviewing success of how this parking management plan will look. So we've talked about some of the strategies. We're really, first and foremost, the city center has done a great job, or South Burlington has done a great job making this an attractive and safe place to walk. So we want to, that gives us great options to be able to park once and then get access to other land uses. Time limits. Time limits is a key strategy already mentioned. Right now we're thinking of a 2-hour maximum, is that you'd pay and you'd have a 2-hour period. You could extend that, but for every transaction it'd be a 2-hour. Paid parking. I've already alluded to this, but this is really their critical management strategy that we're recommending. And this way that we could eventually put in different price structures for on-street and off-street. We could price different streets differently, but right now a pay per hour of around $1 an average, $1 an hour seems to be an average of communities around us. Then the shared parking. This is an idea that you could do outside of pricing and time limits, but that you limit the signage that would require a particular land use to be given that parking space. And instead, you don't put a sign on it, and you acknowledge that out of this suite of parking spaces, we can manage it for multiple land uses. And the chart here on the slide just illustrates how a residential land use in the orange might also partner with a commercial land use in the blue. And so that as some residential folks go and leave their place of their home and they drive their vehicle away somewhere else, that same space could be utilized by a commercial or an office worker. And that is a perfect shared environment where you get that balance. Then lastly, we're going to be monitoring and adjusting this over time. Then the very last and the ideal outcome is that as we provide travel options, those we may need not to own as many vehicles, and simply then we will have fewer parking needs. Now that's maybe a long-term view, but that really is ultimately where the city is committed, multimodal, and looking to achieve climate goals and also just reduce non-auto travel. Any questions so far, or anything to add? So now as we get into some of the results, the parking management strategies that we've analyzed so far, this is really a simple graph because it's a simple concept, is that on street, we are imposing new constraints to sitting there all day and parking. And what we're looking to do is that we're on an average weekday. In this case, we have weekend and weekday. That's what these two columns in each of these boxes represent. The parking patterns generally are pretty similar between weekday and weekend based on the land uses that we have in the current city center area. So we don't need to get distracted too much on how we'll manage weekday versus weekend. We're going to really manage it the same way. What it shows is on street is that we're going to, in the absence of management, we definitely expect that the on-street parking is going to be highly utilized. More so during the key working hours of the day, but still even at night, it would be highly utilized. If we were to manage parking during those weekday hours, we expect that the demand for those parking spaces would go down, and we'd go from a 90% occupancy to maybe around a 60%. So that's a great opportunity for us to ensure that we can get to that one spot per block face on all of the city streets. So we have confidence that this management strategy is not rocket science, and it's not new. This has been deployed in other cities all around, and so as we put these time limits and prices, people are responding in the way that we would expect. And what we expect them to do then is to say, well, now it's going to be, I'm going to be not parking right in front of my door and walk in the building. I'm going to go drive around the building and use the surface lot. For those residents that have access to the off-street private garages, and these are these garages underneath some of the buildings in City Center, we would expect that some of the users would then, instead of parking on street, which might be the most attractive and easiest to get in the front door, they would take the time to go in the garage. And so that's why we see this slight uptick in use of garages and the off-street lots and the larger decrease in the on-street. Now, why you might say, why is it a huge decrease in the on-street? Why does that share just change so much more dramatically on the on-street and only smaller increments on the off-street and the garages? Is simply that we're talking about percentages here. And the on-street spaces is only 270 spaces. On-street is only 203 spaces versus the off-street lots and off-street garages is many times more. So that's why even just moving 15, 20 spaces, it doesn't change the percentages on those other lots. All right, so we're getting near the end of the slides here, but just talking about the on-street regulation, we're going to be managing this through time limits. We will probably have some 15-minute zones like we have now. We have loading zones potentially over time. So we will eventually get this right, that as land use occurs and the occupants fill into these buildings, we'll figure out where we need those dedicated spaces. We're going to build the technology. Right now, the thought is that we'll have the smartphone app that's similar to other communities adjacent to us or nearby, but we'll also probably have a physical kiosk as well. It's still standard practice to have an option for somebody who doesn't have a smartphone to pay with a credit card or have a telephone number to even call at those kiosks. But what we're seeing nationally is that the kiosks are definitely starting to disappear as the prevalence of smartphones is just increasing. We aim to involve those private landowners that own the off-street lots. Ideally, we want to integrate as much of that off-street spaces as possible. For the customer-centric perspective, we want somebody to drive to City Center, and we don't want them to have to know whether they're parking in a city-owned space or a privately owned space. If there's a sign that says, sign up and pay this amount, that's all we want them to do. So we're going to work with other private landowners over time, and I expect that they'll participate and maybe share some parking spaces that will be managed for paid parking. And then lastly, we'll aim for that utilization. We'll really aim for the on-street, that 85th percentile. That's about 1 to 2 spaces for every 10 parking spaces being empty. So the phase 1 that's shown here is that we'll have the 203 total on-street spaces. That's Margaret, Garden, Titilio. And then we'll have the 30 spaces behind City Hall and the 40 spaces that the city has currently been leasing from 155 Market. That's the plan at this point for the first phase. And then lastly, that $1 per hour. And at the point right now that we've designed this for all the costs and the pro forma, we've looked at a 12-hour enforcement period. And the goal is that we would have free overnight parking, but enable that by 8 a.m. when people want to stop by or the offices are starting to be occupied, there would be a couple parking spaces on the street. And so that's why we want to start it early in the morning, really just to change that, get that turnover from the overnight people to getting them off the street. Couple steps here just in terms of implementing the plan.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah,
You
please.
said we could ask questions. So
Yeah,
can you go
please do.
back a slide if possible? That off-street parking coordination on the private land parking lots, are you implying that there would be an agreement where the city would administer the parking tariff and the use of the, and their spaces would be integrated into the city's parking management plan? Okay.
Yeah.
But they would have the right to use a private system if they wanted to, like UPP, right?
They could.
They could.
And
Okay. Because, I mean, there are people that have been ripped off by UPP before. Burlington's had a problem. They've used some really weird, means by which to scare people. And I think there was a court case related to it, right, which they may have lost as well. So I'm uneasy. I think I'm grateful that there's a plan for private landowners to work with the city together. But when they bring in these national parking systems, right? And when you pull in and you don't know, it's not obvious. It's the same color peace sign for public as municipal versus versus private, right? So I just want to make that statement that personally I would want it be highly visible that you're pulling into a non-municipally controlled lot, and different rules apply, right?
Right.
So
that's exactly what we're trying to avoid, and
Okay.
that's why Jonathan and Alana have spent so much time during this process with the private landowners to try and get them bought in early in this conversation, so they see it as an advantage to partner as opposed to doing it on their own.
Great. Because I've had my own issues with UPP out of state, and I'm not worth talking about. The other thing is, would it be possible that in the app to tell the person that it's between December 1st and March 30th, and that there's no parking after midnight? Did you think about that too? Could you warn the person that they can't leave their car in the street during those hours? So that's to be determined in the future.
You want to discuss that now or later?
That's an operational detail.
Great, continue, please. Anybody else have any?
Well, no, I mean, if we're commenting, I appreciate that right now you're proposing both the old-fashioned put a quarter in, as well as the smartphone, because in fact we all know that $1 per hour is about $1.25 because the apps charge for it. So to say that parking is $1 when it's on the map on an app is not accurate.
Right. Yeah, and I think we could do, prior to anything being implemented, be more transparent about what you're actually going to pay out of pocket is not what the city's going to collect. But from our point of view, from the pro forma and estimating what the cost is to do this and the revenue that might come into the door to the city, we're looking at that dollar. But you're absolutely right, Councilor.
Can I clarify? You did not say meters, did you?
Not parking meters, but parking kiosk. So you'd go
So
and
they do not-
plug in a license plate.
I don't think there's a cash option.
The kiosks do have, we would probably not do a cash option, probably a credit card option.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
the
to
cash
clarify.
options for the kiosks actually cost probably more money than it takes in.
Couple of quick questions. I've heard from a lot of residents about the concern of the curve in front of City Hall and the inability to see sight lines going around that curve because cars are parked on the inside curve. on the one hand, that means maybe people go slower. Maybe that's a good thing. But one question is, has there been any consideration of possibly eliminating some of those 10 spots on that inside of the curve to increase sight lines and perhaps create a little better safety for pedestrians crossing and cars maneuvering that corner?
To be honest, we haven't discussed that, but I think we could investigate at some point, and if that becomes a safety concern, then obviously the city has that ability to pull those parking spaces.
Whether residents' concerns are how large they are, I'm not sure, but I've heard repeatedly that concern. The other question I had was time and fees are the two ways to control parking. And it's fairly expensive to set up the parking meter system or the kiosk system and the app system, et cetera. You guys are the experts. I'm sure you know the answer to this, but would it work to be able to have 1 hour parking spots, 2 hour parking spots, et cetera, going out, and having management of the cars to make sure they're moving, and have the tickets pay for the people that are staying where they're not supposed to, as a first step to control parking management, and then add the paid piece later when the demand increases? I just was curious.
We briefly discussed that, and the first issue was that probably the revenue would not be enough to cover the cost for the enforcement there. So that's probably step one if you want to think about it. Step two is that in order to get that turnover, the pricing, we had the confidence. If we wanted to do the time limit and paid for the enforcement, probably going to end up in a position where we're proposing today. It's just a question of when. So I will leave that to the city to determine, but we felt confident with the payment plan, and the payment plan would have a higher confidence of paying for the enforcement. So that's where we started off with the goals as being financially balanced, kind of informed that outcome.
And are there higher rates in the core than there are in some of the more distant lots, or how's that arranged so that I have an incentive to not park in front of City Hall?
Right. At this point, we've designed it with one fee for all the on-street. So the 203 spaces that are shown, even though we know the demand probably far to the east is not as strong as it is in the city center, we're not talking that far of distance yet. But I definitely would think after, let's say, phase one, and we start seeing this demand, if 75 cents versus $1.25 has enough influence, that might be a way to do it. And then lastly, if we can bring our private partners along, they might have a lower cost to really incentivize people parking on theirs rather than the city streets. So absolutely, I think the market and pricing will be a powerful driver, but at this point in phase one, we were going with a more simple solution. We also just didn't want to have a lot of confusion, potentially saying, what lot am I on? What street am I on? Just because getting people adapted to paid parking will be hard enough.
Lakeview has 2 hours free in Burlington. I will walk 12 blocks from that garage anywhere in Burlington to avoid having to pay anywhere else. And thank goodness they've kept that 2 hour free, fee in that, but not in Cherry Street, right? Because that's right in the heart of the commercial district. So anyway.
If I overstay my welcome in my parking place, will I get fined? Or do we as a council need to put in fines, or are they already there?
So you would need to do that. You will need to do a lot of things to make all of this happen.
Okay.
So what Jonathan is presenting is the concept of a parking management plan and enough concepts that he's professionally recommending that we have a jumping off point. But in order to implement any of this, that's his actually next slide. I'm going to let you go.
Well, that's why I put it there. Is that really the next question? Sorry, Councilor, go ahead.
And
Go ahead.
I am not a parking expert. I just happen to come to this building quite frequently at 8:30 in the morning, along with 25 other people who are, at least, who are called senior citizens. And at the same time, on at least a couple of the days, at maybe 9 or 10, there's probably 20 young parents with strollers and whatever coming. And I'm wondering in your who needs to park where and when things are, if in terms of the activities that are actually happening at the city center, at the city hall, at this building, whether you take into how that was taken into consideration. Because I mean, I think of Wednesdays, you know, at 11 o'clock, there's probably upwards of 30 people who, not all of whom are going to want to walk more than even 3 minutes. I mean, 5 minutes.
Yeah, it is accounted for. We estimated, working with the partners, particularly in this building, to estimate what are those peak uses and when do they occur. And based on that, it goes into the model that we used. What happens is that as it goes every hour, and so let's say 11 o'clock on a Wednesday, it tries to put the parking demand for that building closest to the building. It fills up all the on-street lots, the parking around it. And then what happens is that if it fills up, it keeps searching outward and it goes further and further away, out to about 650 feet or so, which is kind of a walking distance that we specified. What it does then is also says all the other buildings adjacent to it. It also tries to fill up the closest. And so it only can fill up to the parking spaces that exist, and then it keeps pushing out. So it's like a balloon. We have only a finite space, and it keeps smushing further out. And so that's how we've estimated how the parking looks. And then when we layer the management, it starts to then change that equation a little bit. So some of those users are going to be pushed further out. Some are going to be pushed to the other off-street lots where they otherwise wouldn't have desired to go originally. So it simply changes their calculus a little bit. So we did estimate the full demand, and that's why we feel comfortable that we're meeting the full demand. And those high priority spaces really close to this building, people are going to have to walk further. That's the net result during those peak periods. It already happens. Some users are walking further. And then the idea is that if we have 2-hour limits, hopefully people are going to meet their parking demand and then turn over, but they're not going to hang out all day. Anything else on that?
Yeah, I think an additional point to that is that people who might be here for 8 or 15 hours a day, that they may be parking further away, and people that are coming for an exercise class or for story time or to come to City Hall and watch the council, they would get they might be more interested in the priority parking that's closer to the building, and they may pay a little premium, or it's closer by, so they are inside that time limit, and it's available for them.
And city councilors get the park free medallion that goes on their plate, right? So we don't have to pay.
You know, that's the next slide, which is the permits question. But just backing up quickly is that if we answered your question, Councilor, but I think it's important that different users will have to consider different parking options. We just won't have all day parking everywhere we want. So the parking management department will have to be designed. Right now, we estimated when it's fully enforced in 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, we need about 2.1 full-time equivalent. Now, this could be phased in, but I think to the question that was raised earlier about how much do you enforce, how much revenue do you need a certain scale in order to start getting that enforcement turnover and to pay for the staff. We would be looking at vendor procurement and then going to create agreements with private landowners. And then probably throughout this whole process, starting tonight, is really the outreach. And how do we educate those that would be parking here and visiting all the businesses? Then we come to the permits. So various...
Can I jump in here?
Yeah, please do.
Sorry. Just before we go forward. And I know this is all at the very beginning. And so some of these comments are a little detailed. But I tend to agree with Laurie that it would be great to see if we could have some period of free parking and get the results we want, like 2 hours free. And then after that, you have to pay or there's enforcement, right? So that people who are popping into Blissby or popping into Felino's can kind of do that without having to worry. I'd love to see if that works. And I hear your concerns and it might not balance, but we could test it out for 6 months, a year, right? And see. So that would be, that is kind of how I'd love to see it. Then like for, you guys, and I guess for us and everyone coming for committee meetings, like how's this going to work? We're at a council meeting now and we need to be checking our phones and re-up the Park Mobile.
Feed the beaters.
No, is that the idea? Like going, is that, so that, I mean, that's kind of interesting, right? That we need to, because a lot of people come here for meetings that go beyond 2 hours, right? And that kind of feels like a bunch of friction. That would disincent people from doing that. And I think we need to think about a little bit. Just can you flip back to the price slide? Just in terms of the sequencing of this, you mentioned scale, right? Scale would be needed to basically support everything that we want to do, and because of that, it kind of feels to me like it would be good to have agreements with some of the private landowners further along before we really start implementing and hiring. I might actually flip step 2 and 3 there and see if we can secure some of those private partnerships to get the scale that would help implement this, and know that's in place before we start, buying equipment and hiring people and setting up departments. So I would personally flip those 2 things. And then finally, this is a question. This the 2-story, I don't know if it's a DMV lot, whose lot it is, a 2-story lot that's not, I don't know, maybe the bottom story is used, but it's not Judge. I know. How can we incent the owner to fix that up so we have all that additional capacity that is really close and would be really valuable? It just feels like such a wasted asset sitting there, and it feeds right into all of this, right? That wasted asset.
Okay. Great for your comments, and I think the private agreement with the private landowner is important, and I think it maybe just valuable to be said is that the off-street parking lots, they have sufficient supply to meet their needs. And we expect, however, that the on-street parking will be highly desirable. So I agree. It's this tension and partnership that we need to explore more, and how to get them to the table to discuss. But permits is where you're going. That's why I kept flicking the screen over, because meetings like this, potentially users could be given a code and you get free parking for a duration of time. So instead of the medallion, you get a code. But this could be an option for various other users, potentially senior center members, potentially income sensitive members for different audiences. These are ways that paid parking can be, the impacts of paid parking can be made less. So permits represent a powerful way to offer free parking or periods of free parking. If it is only an hour, you can enter in some discounts like that. Then we assume the smartphone app-based system along with the kiosks. Then we would also do a small pilot. Technology is never fail-safe, so we would do a limited area beta test, and then before a full implementation. And then lastly, we recommend periodic data collection. That would be, you get a lot of data from the smartphone system in the back end. You'd know how many tickets, how many people paying for parking, how many people re-up and stay there multiple times. But you also then have to just do some observations. Are you getting that 85th percentile occupancy? Are we seeing dramatic declines in occupancy? Well, then maybe we have to get down to 50 cents an hour instead of that $1. Or are people willing to pay it? And maybe we need to increase it or create that zonal differentiation. So this is where we've already been talking about the private lot integration. Clearly, we've put it in the future phase category at this point, just because the private landowners, they do have, we think, sufficient space to meet their needs. But we also realize that we want to have that clarity and to have that park once philosophy. We want to have that comfort that anybody coming to visit would be able to pay for parking wherever it may be, and then walk to their other uses. So we do anticipate that there's other private lots that we've had discussions with, not just the ones right here. But we've got the Blue Mall on Market Street. They have a lot. Catamount Run has the surface lots that we've discussed. Delta Hotel and the Central School, as well as Judge properties that we've discussed. So we've met with all these entities to talk about other opportunities, maybe for additional visitor parking, long-term parking, as Alana mentioned. So some people who need to be here 8 hours a day, maybe they don't park in some of the prime spaces. There are some great public benefits to all of this, is that we're supporting our business environment and the employers in City Center. We want to have that turnover, the activation of the streetscape. We also want to reduce congestion, allow people to park as efficiently as possible, not just circulating around and looking for the best price. And we want to increase accessibility to our businesses and our residents. So the goal is a flexible implementation. We want this to be adaptable. So this is the phase one. We've provided a idea for how we would manage the public supply of parking spaces, and realize that there's many phases left to go in the future and to optimize this. So we want to be responsive to your feedback and the community feedback at large. So I'll stop sharing this unless there's other slides that you'd like to go back to.
One more quick question. In terms of the parking app, are you guys considering Park Mobile?
We are considering it.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't want to have 5 different apps.
We agree.
As long as they're being competitive and being good.
Yeah, I don't want to say every parking vendor has their own pros and cons, but they're relatively easy to implement. And
if we pick one, and then at some point in the future they're not being competitive, does all the equipment have to change, or do you just change the app and you use the same equipment?
It's always the same. Each app integrates with every other piece of equipment, but I will say when we talked to Park Mobile, they did say that South Burlington has the second highest app usage on their phones of any other.
We're well trained.
Vermont community.
The signage is really what's expensive. We swapped in Winooski. We went from one to Park Mobile, and it's the signage and education that really is the expensive part, not the technology.
So is there any way to piggyback on this with the notification for system for tell people to get their cars off the street instead of having a parking ban in the wintertime?
There's a lot of technology involved in this,
Yeah.
and a lot of signage involved. so I imagine somewhere there may be an opportunity for integration, but we'll have to see. I think a lot of it depends on what's selected and how it's programmed.
And I know UVM, I mean, they have tag readers, right? So they just cruise through all the parking lots and tag read like crazy until a beep goes off, and then they get out of the car and put the ticket on.
They have a very sophisticated sensor camera on a vehicle.
Yeah, right, yep.
But they're enforcing, I don't know how many thousands of spaces.
Yeah, they are. No, they are.
Different
That's a good
scale.
job. And in Burlington, sometimes you randomly see an enforcement person just kind of walking through the garage with a phone,
right,
with a camera.
That's what this would be. It would be a handheld reader. Yep.
On an e-bike, that'd be the way to do it.
Yeah, you'd really get your enforcement down. 5-minute loops.
A couple of questions. One, and this is to me the biggest challenge is the behavioral change over time. When you benchmark Burlington and Winooski, feedback on sort of how their process rolled out. Any highlights of that or?
Well, to be honest, the questions that we posed and we asked, nobody that we talked to remembered the day one turn on. And that happened. We spoke with cities in New Hampshire, Maine, Keene, Brattleboro, Montpelier. Paid parking is not something that you do every day. And so we are, I used the term exciting earlier on, and it's exciting for a new parking system. So unfortunately, Councilor, I don't have those stories to tell from the day one.
and my other comment is having utilized those systems for a long time, and also seeing how Burlington's lost a lot of parking spots, and there's a lot of feedback about that. The signage and the kiosks I find to be, I don't want to call it as strong as offensive, but it really affects your hardscape of our downtown area. And where you have loading signs, you have 15-minute parking signs, you have number signs for the code you have to input. The kiosks take up a fair amount of space, and they have to be a certain area from a walkability of certain parking spots. That's hard to envision, seeing our Market Street with all that hardware on it.
The kiosks, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a balancing act. It's certainly signage is, there's communication, a battle between communication and beautification is, there's always a tension there. And so I think that's something that we'll have to work through with the design of the system. And it's the same thing with kiosks, because you need enough so that people can get to them, but you also, as you need to have them available, but they hopefully over time they will become less and less used to the point where we can phase them out.
The thing that bothered me in the last 5 or 6 years, maybe it's longer than that, is the creeping of the end time on the parking rate, right? So, in Burlington, it used to be like, 5 o'clock, right? Then it was 6 o'clock, and they had the meters that had the little LEDs that were blinking and stuff like that. It was like, okay, 6 o'clock. Do you want to go out for dinner? No problem. You go down and say, yeah, it's 5:45. Yeah, you're fine, right? Now, and then I went to Winooski years ago, and I'm like, 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, right? I mean, well, they want your money anytime you park there, even if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, for God's sakes, So, so that's the thing that kind of crossed a line with me. It's like, if I want to go out for dinner somewhere and park in your town and patronize your dinner establishment, last thing I want to think about is unless I'm parking in a parking garage. If I park in a parking garage, that's different, right? But anyway, so I guess the time creep has now gotten into dinner time and after that as well. So
There is flexibility.
there's flexibility.
Full stop. There is flexibility. There's a desire that we realize that we have restaurants that will occupy the streetscape, and you want to get enough turnover. So is it 7 p.m.? Maybe that's the sweet spot where you stop doing it. Yeah. I think that's where only the proof will be when we start looking at it, and that's what a lot of this is, getting ready for these full tenants to be up and operational. And so right now we're only seeing a snapshot of really what is going to happen, and that's why we're using the best available data that we've got. But
I think that also the flip side of that argument, I hear what you're saying on the creep, but one of the things that I think we saw it this week during the snowstorm, we have residents who are parking in street and spaces right in front of our businesses. So the evening hours are as much to enable turnover for the restaurants as well as keeping the residents out of the high turnover spots.
And Tim, when you get down to it, the fee for parking is a lot less than the cost of an Uber, which would keep you from needing a car at all.
True. That is if the Uber even picks you.
That's right. That's right. So,
or
you could ride your bike.
I don't want to interrupt your questions because you guys are asking great questions, but I would like to pose a question to the council. Are we ready for that? So a lot of what you're talking about, whether it's less hours or app fees or free parking, the tension that puts on the system is not being able to sustain the system with the parking fees and the ticket revenue. So my question for you is, what is given that we have a lot of work to do between now and our first app user, what is your risk tolerance of using funds other than parking fund, enterprise funds to do this work? Like, are we willing to say we're going to put one-time funds, or are we going to put tax rate dollars into managing parking to enable free parking, to enable signage, to enable those kinds of things. We have been operating under the assumption that we want it to be an enterprise fund, a business that operates unto itself, but that's going to be a pressure against some of these other things that you're talking about.
I would like to see how it works with free parking, and if it doesn't work and we need to put some dollars toward it, while we reset it, that would be within my comfort level. And personally, I think by the time we roll all this out, we should just forego the kiosks and assume everyone has smartphones and save the money on that infrastructure and also save the visual impediment.
Thank you.
This being an enterprise zone is the goal from my perspective. Like the South Burlington SB3C, getting it up off the ground takes some one-time funds to get started. We might need to do some of that with this, but given our budget stresses nowadays, I think we got to be really careful about how we do that. And I've also heard from residents that I already pay my taxes, why do I have to pay when I want to come to City Hall? So is there a way to make it so that, and that gets into the details, but there are a lot of components to it, and it's like we're going to be talking about the TIF district in a few minutes and the funds that we're going to have to spend there, and we are going to be getting into financial trouble unless we pay really close attention. So that's a roundabout answer for you.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, the only way to control the demand is by making people pay for it. I have no qualms with that. And so this is the only way to do that, is to have this plan to move forward. So I'm supportive of it. So.
There's so much that is the city, what we want to do, that I like if at all possible, I would be in support of keeping this within an enterprise as opposed to tapping into ongoing operational funds. And there are not a lot of places in Burlington that are free parking. There's not a lot of places in Winooski that are free parking. It does take a mindset change, and that will be difficult for all of us. And having just had to pay a $10 parking fee in Montpelier because I was 15 minutes over. However, those are the things that happen. I would rather, in terms of looking at free parking, at some point deciding, do we want to have a free parking day because we're trying to get people somewhere or something like that, trying to get people to businesses or to retail, I want to say retail businesses or something, to experiment with that. But I hear what you're saying is that maybe there needs to be a one-time infusion to get it up and running. The problem with one-time infusions is that
They end up 2 times.
it ends up 2 times. It ends up becoming, well, we have this, and so we're always going to have this, and we don't have a plan, and then people get surprised. So, I err then on keeping it within an enterprise.
So one of the benefits of the technology is that if you have been to Cherry Street Garage or the Lakeview Garage in the last 6 years, is that people have disappeared from it. There's nobody there, right? So, and you don't have to go plug something into a meter. You can just use your phone, and so there's a real huge reduction in personnel that are required to operate the system, which is good.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I mean, there's clearly a lot of operational issues that will get worked out. The equity issues are a big question for me that you've talked about already. I think I would look at scaling this sort of deliberately and maybe looking at more of a 3-year period to get it to the enterprise status, where the investment scales down over a period of time, whatever that time frame is, that might be required, and that might offset how quickly it's built up with staffing.
I'm sorry, Elizabeth, I'm not hearing what you're saying.
Oh, sorry. I'm suggesting that maybe we scale it up deliberately so that the initial investment would go down from year one over, say, 3 years, and then it has to be at an enterprise status within a certain time frame, a 3-year period. And then to Andrew's point, kind of see how things are going. I think the free parking for a period of time, and I think behavioral change is going to take a while. And then hopefully we are also seeing additional, build up in city center that sort of warrants that change.
3 years makes sense to me as well.
That's really that was really helpful. Thank you it's helpful to hear how you guys are thinking about that. Thanks.
Do you need any other feedback about this, or?
I don't necessarily need any feedback. I think what I'm hearing is that you all are kind of on board with some kind of parking management plan. So it would be helpful to us, given that we are going to spend a fair amount of time now looking at ordinances and looking at parking funds and financial models and whatnot, for you to accept this plan, not necessarily adopt what's in here, because the hours could change or the rates could change or something like that, but accept it as a concept to give us kind of the political cover to do a bunch of work on it.
So I'd be happy to do that, but I just want us to think about, as we think about the financial aspects of this, what if we were to provide permits codes to employees, council members, people that come for committee meetings? It feels like a burden to ask those folks to pay for parking when they're here to do a city service, as opposed to go to a restaurant. It just feels funny to me. So I'd love to have that in the modeling and see what that does if we were to do that. And again, I would also love to see us spend more time on these private partnerships before we really dive into this, because I think scale is going to be really important.
You can just increase the stipends too.
I move to accept the plan.
I don't think we need a motion.
It would be helpful to me if you accepted the plan.
Well, we have a motion. We have a second?
Yes. We have a second.
Okay. So second. Okay. So we have a motion and a second to accept this city parking management plan. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
With the comments that we made.
Yep.
Yeah. All the comments. Yep. That was a yay? Yeah. Okay. So it's unanimous. Great. Thank you very much. Nice plan. Nice presentation. Appreciate all that work very much. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah. RSG once again. Did you want to take a break? Mm-hmm. Okay. 5-minute break, folks. Thank you. All right. We are all back. We're going to resume. Oh, you have to keep. Right? Yep. Okay. We're going to resume with tonight's meeting with item 10, which is receive an update on the TIF district revenue and expenditure projections and the TIF district capital projects. Alana Blanchard, Community Development Director. Good evening again.
Good evening. So I am just going to pull up the TIF district summary. I have too many things open. I'll get to it in a moment. I think if I do this, it'll. There we go. So I'm excited, not super excited. I mean, I'm super excited, but not 100% to be giving you a TIF update tonight. Not a great lead in. So our TIF district right now is doing really well. Our finances are in balance within the TIF district. However, we do have a projection model, and that helps us understand how our TIF district is doing in the long run. It's essentially a 25-year project to build a downtown, and right now we're in year 9 of our collection period, or year 14 of the overall TIF district since 2012. And so as we build the model in order to understand, what will happen financially over time as the TIF district goes on if we do nothing, and if we only have the development that has already been permitted in some form, shape, or form. We also do a projection to look at what happens if a building the size of Union Place, which is at the corner of Guardian and Market Street, gets added to the grand list each year between 2028 and 2037. And then we do one model to understand, how many apartment units would need to be added each year between those same years. So 61 units if it were Union Place, and then 56 units to break even. So this year, our tax rate for commercial property did go down. So the model is showing a longer period during which we would not realize the benefits of the TIF district until 2044, and that's shown in right. It's actually down in the lower text, but so 2045 is when we would realize the funds, and we would continue to use those funds to pay off the TIF district debt that service the debt that has been used to build the infrastructure. So essentially what this says is that if we do nothing, we would have many years in which we would be carrying costs for the TIF district debt, whereas if we continue to work to encourage development within the TIF district, that there's an opportunity to realize revenues from the TIF district when all of the debt is paid in 2038. The city has taken many steps. You have taken many steps in the past year to encourage the realization of the full potential of the TIF district, as well as city center around the TIF district. And staff continue to look for ways to improve permitting processes, and also to work with developers and landowners in order to encourage development in the TIF district. Any questions?
So when you say after 2038 we realize the benefits, but just to be clear, aren't we realizing the benefits all along, in the sense that we borrowed 29 million with interest thereon? It's what, 39.40 or so, and that borrowing is all going to be repaid by this kind of 75% reallocation that we otherwise would not have gotten.
That's
right.
correct.
So just doing the TIF district alone, and I understand we need to keep building. We're going to benefit to the tune of, say, 40 million or so, right?
Yes.
Whatever happens beyond 2038.
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to be clear on that. When we started the TIF district, what did we anticipate as kind of the model of growth to support it? Was it about 56 units, and are we basically on track?
So the amount of growth, we did anticipate more growth, and so we are on track, but we anticipated more growth, but more growth in the beginning, and then slower growth over time. So depending on when the growth occurs, changes how you realize the growth, the benefit from the growth, if that makes sense. So if you're taxing it more, if it happens earlier, then you're taxing it more years and you receive more revenue. I think overall the capacity of the TIF district hasn't changed that much, except that there is a lot more capacity now because of the rezoning.
Right, but are we like pretty much on track, like things going as planned?
Yeah, right now we're in balance. We are not that far behind in revenue, but we do need more development at the tail end to pay off to service the debt in a timely fashion.
Yeah. Okay.
I think I totally agree with what Alana said. Additionally, I think one of the phases we're coming up to is redevelopment that's a little more challenging than the development we've seen to date. So we are absolutely on track. One of the reasons we want to bring this to you every year is to make sure we're continually communicating to you where we are in that plan. And I think that it will be a heavier lift to get the next 10 years of development than it has been to get the last 10 years of development. Not to minimize the amazing work that you all and Alana and the property owners have done to realize this, but infill development is harder than greenfield development.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this benchmark today exacerbated by the current permits in the system and the implications of inflation and construction and kind of the market forces? Is that also?
I would say that we've had some interesting few years getting to here. The construction market has been through a lot of changes, and it's continuing to change. And we went through the pandemic, so we've continually been adjusting our projections and monitoring the TIF district. That being said, there is still an appetite to develop. And people are figuring out ways to move forward. But we are at a point where we're looking more at redevelopment than development, and so it will be more challenging, and that we will continue to have to work to ensure that people have the best information that they have, and that we're communicating and understanding what challenges they may have, because it's a tough environment right now.
What greenfield acreage is left within the TIF district? Is it the eastern end of north and eastern end of Market Street for one, right? There's a few acres there. I don't know how many acres, but there's quite a fair amount there. But there's nothing then going down Market Street anymore. All of that is all taken except for one small lot next to the Goose Pond Park, which
there's two smaller lots next. Yeah.
But then you fall into San Remo Drive area, right?
Right.
Where there's no green field there, but there's parking lots and there's other old buildings that, could be redeveloped, like you said.
That's correct.
But there's a lot of potential there.
There's a huge amount of potential.
Yeah.
And north of Williston Road, next to Larkin's building, there, where the road's supposed to be continuing, that's part of the TIF district. That's part of the TIF district, isn't it?
So on Williston Road, the Mary Street is in the TIF district, and the Anchorage Inn is in the TIF district, but most of the entire north side of Williston Road and the corner that includes the hotel, the gas station, and Greer's and the Judge property are not in the TIF district.
Okay. Yeah. And the U-Mall's not in the TIF district.
Right? The U-Mall is not in the TIF district.
It's in the Newtown Center, but not. Right.
The Blue Mall is in.
The what?
The Blue Mall is.
The Blue Mall is, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
there's many opportunities, and there is interest, and it will be a process.
So this worst case scenario is the red number. I'm taking it, right? If nothing happened, but outside of current permits, right? Nothing happened. But that's a 2037 TIF fund balance. What does that number look like in 2045?
So in 2045, it is.
Is it zero?
Yes, at the end of 2045.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
When do the bonds mature?
I'm sorry?
When do the bonds mature?
The bonds will be paid off. What this shows is that we're continuing to make payments.
When do they mature?
And so the last bond payment would be in 2038.
Okay. So by 2038.
By 2038.
But the city would need to carry those costs with additional funds until then.
Yeah. So the reserve fund, right, is going to be our primary vehicle. Right?
It is, but it would be insufficient.
It's insufficient, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
In 2031 and 2032.
Okay.
Yeah. 2032 is the first year that it's insufficient.
Alana, could I ask you to add a couple of lines to this? It would be really helpful to me to see the year we issued the bonds, the proceeds, and then another line which shows when we pay the bond down and the net balance.
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
And I would say that that is available to you today in the long-term debt schedule.
That's what?
That is available to you today in the long-term
But I
debt
think that's
schedule.
like,
But I can put it
to me, that's
onto
like the
this.
key thing. How much do we owe and how are we paying it down? And it's just really hard to get that from this chart.
We can add that.
Thank you.
So, is there anything else the council can do to help promote the extra development that's needed in this area? I mean,
I think at this point we don't have anything specific, but we know that we're working on items to bring to you.
I mean, we're trying to make it easy to do these developments, or easier, right?
Yes.
And promote, you know, the variation in design and facades and spacing. And
Yes, we know that permitting, if you haven't done it 10 times before, is very challenging. And so that's something that's definitely being looked at.
And our permitting system is now, is it fully automated now? Or
No.
almost?
This winter, it will be fully automated.
And I'm
winter.
not saying I'm not saying it's more challenging than any other place.
Right.
I'm just saying it's not an easy thing. And we're also working to make sure that people understand the opportunities, because there are huge opportunities here. And so communicating those opportunities to people and working with them to make sure that that they're understanding all the changes that you have made, and that the form-based code generally offers.
I think, just to underline that point, I think you have made an enormous number of changes in the last couple of years that are directly pointed to incentivizing city center development. So you've looked at the form-based code and changed it and upzoned it. You've adopted an economic development strategic plan. You've adopted or accepted housing targets. You've invested in capital projects. You've invested in SB3C. All of these things are tools that create a vibrant downtown, and how we tell the story of that we are, you know, city center is open for business. We want to be creative. We want to be good thought partners with investors and developers. I think that kind of continued momentum is really important. But as Alana says, you've done a lot. We need to see the market react to what's currently on the ground. That, you know, is in the works, but is it nothing for you to do tonight? Except for talk about capital projects. You definitely need to talk about capital projects tonight.
Well, there's this huge demand for housing.
Yeah.
So there's got to be capital out there and somebody willing to take the risk to build a ton of housing in the space that's left, right? Or redevelop some area because it's on the bus line, it's in a vital area, it's in Chittenden County.
And we are having those conversations. I mean, almost every week, Alana and I are talking to folks who are looking to invest, who are looking to do something with their property. Those conversations are happening, and they take a while to get them.
And maybe during other business, I want to just follow up a little bit on the thought that we can build housing in city center, because everything's getting built as rental. But I have some information on condos that I want to share, and that maybe we can do something about.
I also have a question about incentivizing construction in the TIF district. The LDR changes that we just did for building heights are a huge, greatly increase the value of people's property. Our LDRs have also made a lot of property in our city value go down. And we created transfer development rights to try and adjust that. However, we don't have any incentive right now to, as we're making this shift of wealth or value from our natural resource areas and our open spaces, et cetera, to increasing the value of our city core. How do we make it so that some of the increased value that's here is actually being accessible to those TDRs and giving some motion to that, while not slowing down the incentives to develop? But this is our opportunity to actually make good on a system that we set up a long time ago.
Didn't we vote to direct the planning commission to do that?
We
I thought we did.
there are agreed, and there are lots. We are having those conversations.
I know it's very complicated. I know it's very complicated, but
if Paul were still on, he would have.
Yeah, I wish Paul were still on, but we have a tough balancing act to do between providing value and to people in the TIF district, and also balancing how we provide benefit to everybody in the city. And I know we're going to talk about capital projects and et cetera, and all of this plays in because there is an imbalance right now. And we need to figure out what to do about that. Sorry.
What else?
I agree.
You said capital projects.
Capital
Okay.
All right. I'm going to stop sharing. Very excited to report that last week we did our walkthrough for Garden Street West. So the first section is now operational, two-way, and I can't claim any credit because Tom's team did an amazing job on that project. There's now new stormwater. There's water that connects to the rest of the city, which is huge for fire safety to ensure that there's enough fire flows on Market Street and on Garden Street. There's also going to be lights coming in the spring. There's trees out there now. So most importantly, there's a really nice bicycle and pedestrian connection on both sides. And it's been fun to see more people using the crosswalk than ever, which is always great. The other project that's making huge strides is the City Center Park project, and we're going to be looking at a mock-up of the first installed part of the boardwalk this week, which is pretty cool.
What did you say that the pylons are? Are they just basically screws they put in the ground?
They put screws into the ground, yes. Helical piles. And I think people just love saying helical because you hear about them all the time. They're coming, they're on order, they're being manufactured, and then, they show up and then they go into the ground super easy. And so those are now in the ground, and the first section of boardwalk is being installed and ready for us to go and look at and make sure that it looks the way it was expected to look. So that boardwalk will be open to the public at the latest in the spring of this year.
Quick question on that. Yeah. I noticed in the reading today that it talks about lighting in the park. And is that park going to be open at night, or are parks all closed at night?
So because that park has a shared use path that goes through it, and because it's between neighborhoods and schools, we made the decision to install bollard lighting. So it's very low level lighting, but enough lighting that those paths could be used, especially in the wintertime when it gets dark so early, later in the evening. Thank you. Earlier in the evening, the actual hours of the park, I'm sure those will evolve over time.
Will City Center Park get a refresh at all? The play structures and things like that, and the landscaping?
So the landscaping will be mainly associated with the paths, and so it will not. There will not be a refresh of the landscaping in the center area, if that's what you're referring to. There will be additional signage added to the park where the goose structures are, and there will be a big sign for the park on Market Street that identifies it as City Center Park, and it will become the main entrance to the park. Okay. And then the Williston Road Streetscape is also underway. It's in the slowest phase for any project, which is the right-of-way acquisition. And so we have 2 parcels that have been acquired, but there's many additional parcels where we're holding conversations with those property owners. And hopefully we'll be bringing them to you this year and early next year. The Walk Bike Bridge, which is the big project that I would like to talk to you about tonight. I think we've been communicating with you. It was put out to bid in May. We received bids in August, and unfortunately, they were substantially higher than the engineer's estimate from the spring. And because of that, we have been working since then to be able to position the project to rebid the project. So we had a very substantial gap, and we've been working to narrow that gap. And then we're also working to narrow the gap to put the project out to bid. And so those are 2 different exercises, but both very important. We're very interested in putting the project out to bid as quickly as possible. We're concerned about inflation eroding the value of the existing federal grants that we have, and we're also concerned about there's like a nice sweet spot window that people like to bid projects in the winter, and that's when people don't have as much lined up and are more apt to give better pricing on projects. So we're working to get it out as quickly as possible for those two items. That being said, we do need to be able to afford to put it out, and that's what we're working towards. So in order to reduce the costs overall for the project, we're going through, the engineers and the project team are going through value engineering on the project. I had talked publicly before about reducing the width of the bridge. That is not happening because of the cost to update the engineering model. In order to do that, it sort of erased, it made the savings not, and also the time to update that model made the savings not guaranteed. So the value engineering that is being done is to redo the barrier along the bridge for pedestrians. So that had a handrail. There will not be a handrail, and it will be an off-the-shelf rather than a manufactured, one-of-a-kind barrier. The other big value engineering that you would see that's different from in the plan set is that the landscaping that was on the inside of the project, all of the shrubs were removed. That also removes landscaping backfill, which is fairly expensive, so that also helps to reduce the cost. There's other items.
And is there pavement there instead?
No, it'll be grass. So
Grass, okay.
and there will still be trees, but there will not be. There was a lot of flowering shrubs that will not be there. We did have some concerns about maintaining those in the long run, anyways. So I think there are some people who are quite relieved that those are not there. So, but in general, so there was a pattern on the outside of the walls supporting the ramp. There is a pattern going forward. It won't be as inexpensive a pattern. So things like that are getting changed. There's things that are not visible to the public so much, but that will save the project money.
Quick question on
Yeah.
the handrailing, not the
Yes.
handrail, but the guardrail that you're talking about.
Yes.
Was that the curved sort of red structure that you saw in all the drawings?
Yes. So that is staying in the project.
That is staying in the
That is staying in the project. What is not staying in the project, what is changing is the actual barrier, which is a cable fence that goes along the entire structure, and it will still be there. It just won't be. It's different than it was before. Yes, similar, not the same. The other thing that we're doing is looking at our other projects. So where we can bring funds into other projects, like the City Center Park or Garden Street, we are bringing those funds in. And what that does is it frees up TIP dollars that were in those budgets, and we're able to allocate them to the bridge project. we have interest on our TIF bond proceeds, and we spend that. Usually, we always take that interest money on the TIF bond proceeds, and we spend them on projects. We have some of them from the latest bond, and that is in the city center park project right now. And so, but there was additional interest proceeds, and those have been moved into the bridge project for FY25. I already spoke about getting the project out to bid as quickly as possible to improve the pricing. So overall, this reduces the overall project cost by approximately $2.5 million. The other things that we're doing are to be able to bid the project sooner, and so to reduce costs, immediate costs in bidding it. When we bid out the project, we have to maintain the overall utility of it. So it's called independent utility. We can't reduce the project so much that it's not useful, or else we can't use federal funding. So we can't just break it in half, build one half this year and one half after we have funding. So what we can do is take the pieces off of it that are not integral to the overall use of the project, but that we think we can still get funding for in the future. So that includes the part of the project that connects around the CVS to the path on Dorset Street, and the path that connects between the project and Quarry Hill. And so those two pieces have been segmented and they will definitely, the CVS portion and probably the Quarry Hill portion will be put into a second phase to be bid out at a later date.
So, and a lot of the, so the $2.5 million excess that you're citing, does that exclude the cost of building those two pieces, or is that?
That's a general overall. So
if we exclude those, is it less than 2.5 gap?
Yes.
What does the gap come down to when we exclude
it comes back down to those combined are approximately 600,000, 700,000.
Okay.
So that brings it down further. So these are more temporary cost savings. They're not permanent cost savings. So the first ones are permanent cost savings. The second group is we'll need to seek other funding types of savings. Although we also do have additional TIF bond revenue, interest fees that are future revenues, so that in putting into, would also take the cost down further. I didn't count it in the first section, but I am counting it in the second section in this part. And then so those two combined leaves us with a $2.5 million gap. That I don't have any additional revenues that I can allocate to this project or additional design changes that can bring the cost down further. These are all estimates, but that's what our estimate is. So in order to put the project out to bid, we, our partners are VTrans. They follow federal regulations, and they work to protect the overall ecosystem of the construction industry. We can't take the project out to bid unless we can show that we have funds in hand that can be used to build the project. VTrans does have a gap funding grant program. It opens in April. It's a summer application program, and we could apply for funding, or we can, and that's we will apply for funding for that program. And I believe that we would be very competitive, but again, it doesn't open until April. And we've been told, there is this grant program. You're not guaranteed to get it, but as long as you do a good job on your application, you should be competitive. In the meantime, we do have to demonstrate to them, and it's not an arduous process, but we do have to write a letter that can be put into a file that says there are funds available for this project, and these are the funds that we would use in the absence of any other funds. And so we're recommending that we use funds from Garden Street, and in the memo, I talked through the different phases of the Garden Street and when we need the Garden Street funds, and also capital reserve funds, because we can't bring too much TIF money into the project because only 30% of the project is TIF district financing eligible. So there's a cap of how much we can use. So the Garden Street project, the third phase, is not set to go out to bid until the winter of 2026-27, which would give us time to secure additional funding to bring into the project. And so that is and then the reserve funds are funds that we do have on hand, also similar to the Garden Street funds. And that would make up that gap between the 30% eligible and the estimated cost of the project to put it out to bid without that phase 2. Did that make sense?
So, Lana, do you think that the VTrans gap funding may fill the entire $2.5 million hole? Is that the hope? Okay.
Talk about a balancing act.
Yeah.
And if we have other funds committed in order to go ahead with the bidding, and then the GAP grant does not come through, we are committed to keeping those other funds available for the project. Is that correct?
We're committed to paying for the project.
Okay.
We have to be able to pay the project. Which funds we use would still be up to the council.
And if we put the project out to bid before that grant opens, when would we be awarding the contract?
Ideally in January.
So we would actually
early
award
February.
the contract in January.
January, February.
Alana, can you walk through again which funds you're recommending be allocated to the Garden Street and the City Center Park projects?
Yes. So City Center Park currently has transportation impact fees in it, and it has, transportation impact fees and pennies for pass funds in it. There are an additional $40,000 in transportation impact fees that were intended to be spent on Mary Street, and that project was completed under budget. And so those $40,000 in transportation impact fees could be reallocated at a future date to City Center Park or to a different project. There is also approximately $300,000 in pennies for paths that has not been reallocated, that has not been allocated at all, but is projected because of the projected revenues from the tax rate are projected to go into the pennies for paths fund, and so those funds could be allocated to a TIF project. Specifically city, they could be allocated to any one of the 3 projects because they all have pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure that is beyond what is there today. I'm thinking if there was another piece in there. I think those are the main pieces.
And is the reserve fund going into those 2 projects as well? Is that
There was a capital reserve fund, or not the city center reserve fund, right? I mean,
So separate from that, as the reserve fund is identified as a way to close the cash in hand gap, but is not proposed as a permanent solution unless absolutely necessary.
because that's part of our TIF bond
Yes.
payment source. Yeah, good.
Yes.
We also have just ARP inspired fund balance too, right?
Mm-hmm. I think.
How much? I thought it was like 1.4.
It's got interest in it. It's about 2 million.
It's now 2 because of interest?
Well, I've got the number.
Okay.
Alana, what level of confidence do we have that the value engineering that's been done will bring in a bid result that is aligned with what we need? And are there other changes that could be made? I mean, I love the red whatever on the bridge, but if we're looking at trying to be fiscally responsible with tight budgets, at what point do we look at this and say, well, what point do we say, what other changes can we make? But if we don't get the bid result that we're looking for, what's the likelihood and what happens if we don't?
If we don't get the bid result that we're looking for, we may have to look at other changes. I think what's hard is that if we start looking at if we start significantly changing the bridge, we're looking at redoing the model, and that is adding like a long time. It's a lot of calculation and it's a lot of cost. It's hundreds of hours. Yeah. So.
If he goes out to bid again and we're short again, right? Because of whatever. I mean, is there a cut point where the federal funds are cut off and we can't use them? Wasn't there an end date on that?
There is an end date of 2027.
2027. So.
Yeah.
So we could get in trouble.
We could get in
trouble.
Yeah.
And we've already spent money. We've spent money for easements. We've spent money on engineering, right?
Yes.
And design work and.
Yes. And
what have we spent $1 million on that yet? Okay. So double that.
And a lot of that money was not our money.
Yeah.
80% of it was not ours.
Yeah.
We got skin in the game.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I just want to be clear about what we're asking for. We're not asking you to do anything tonight.
But you need to be able to write the letter, right?
Well, so what we had two goals for tonight. One was to present our annual TIF projections to you because we think that's very important. Two was to foreshadow to you that this is coming, because part of this authorization to bid, funds available to bid, requires a VEBC substantial change request. So that's what the action you would need to take at your next meeting if you were basically amenable to this plan. So we will prepare that document. You don't have to decide tonight whether you want to execute that document, but we want it to not be like, hey, by the way, sign this letter tonight. Yeah.
And for clarity, it's really to identify the sources, and based on what happens with the grant application, they may or may not have to be leveraged.
That's correct. We would need the substantial change regardless to have a higher level of TIF financing in the project, but we doesn't mean we have to have the full amount in the project. We can always spend less TIF financing. They're always good with that.
What bothers me is the phase 2 part where you're connecting CVS and Quarry Hill. I think the Quarry Hill connection is really important to get the students across the bridge, right? I mean, some might come, down from Staples, along Williston Road, but the Quarry Hill is critical, and the CVS part is important too. That design work is all done, but that means that construction would happen at a second phase, a different time.
It would happen in a second phase. It would happen at a different time, but because this project has such a long time frame, it could happen. It could open at the same time.
Okay.
And if we get the GAP grant, everything is on schedule, right?
And it may be a combination of grants to get phase 2 also, or it may be one.
Alana, is the plan still to add those two as bid alternates?
The plan is to add Corey Hill as a bid alternate, but I'm getting conflicting messages from the team as to whether that's a good idea. But the CVS is definitely a phase 2.
Plow ahead.
Well, thank you, Alon. This is actually really complicated. A lot of moving parts. Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not the one sleeping with this.
No, this is.
No. That's not the message we give Alana. The message we give Alana is we have your back.
We have
will
your back.
figure it out with you. It's not all on your shoulders.
We have your back. You're doing an amazing job.
Yeah.
But I know when I've done projects, not this big, and I'm sitting with this stuff, I'm feeling empathy for what you're doing and appreciation.
The message for Alana is like, you're really good at spreadsheets. I have this spreadsheet at work. Could you call me tomorrow and help me figure out this one cell problem? I can't get the formula. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alana.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to item number 11, which is receive the FY26 Policy Priorities and Strategies Report number 1 by Jesse Baker, City Manager.
So I'm not going to walk through all of this. I want, as part of our annual policies and policy priorities and strategies process, we always give you a number of reports throughout the year to provide you updates on where we are in accomplishing those things. As we talked to you about back in the spring, we're trying to make those a little more useful for you and a little more useful for the community, and quite frankly, a little more useful for all of us to have shared accountability. So we want to provide that to you tonight, get your thoughts, questions, and any ideas that you have for how to further improve the report over time. I don't necessarily need those ideas tonight, but if you have ideas in the future about how to make this more useful to you all, we are certainly open to those things. I hope you can see that for the vast majority of projects, there is good progress being made.
I like this report format.
Thanks.
Does this have all the items on it? I didn't cross-check, but for instance, I know the sections are not.
No, so good question. So this,
I didn't hear it.
so his question is, does this have all the items on it?
Oh.
So it doesn't. So if you remember last year, we arranged the policies and strategies a little different by capital projects, ordinance changes, master plans, and other projects. So we focused this one on those 3 buckets because of how we were doing the report, and because those are honestly the 3 biggest buckets. So we've left out, if you click on the link, and the next report will integrate those in. So we have left out the operations review and improvements, the partnership or engagement efforts, and the studies or research. So if you have ideas or other things that would be helpful for you to see as we iterate this report, we are open to those.
I also like the report format. I think it's really useful. I was noticing the under budget, over budget line for projects, and I think that's really important to be able to see. And in the current budget situations, that I was looking at that while I was also looking at the bridge, and just aware of the balancing act that we have to be doing. I also wanted to ask you about one thing that's not on this, which is from the sextants, which I'm just wondering what the progress is on that piece, because it keeps coming up every time we have a meeting, and I know that it's being worked on, but I just wanted either tonight or at some point to get an update on where the process is for getting the cemetery as a home and an administrator.
You will see a recommendation on that on Friday in your budget book.
Wow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jesse, in terms of the active transportation plan, we finished a plan, right? And this is like a second phase then?
So this is the phase that integrates the active transportation plan with the ADA study, with the official map changes, kind of integrates all those plans together into one. I think Councilor Smith, this was a priority for you back in the day when you felt like they weren't necessarily, they were segmented and not aligned. There are this is a UPWP project for this year with CCRPC. It's a lot of acronyms. We are not convinced that that's the path to go down right now, so we're exploring doing that in-house.
Could we just relabel as active transportation plan phase 2 or so?
Sure.
Because we did the active transportation plan.
Yes.
Like, that's done.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Going on to item 12, which is review the significant agenda topics below for our December 1st meeting.
So primary agenda item on December 1st will be the presentation of the proposed FY27 budget. That will then follow on December 11th, your work session with the team. As we just talked about, this TIF financing substantial change request to the Vermont Economic Progress Council, and then hopefully discuss the Safe Routes to School bike ped charge. Those are the major things.
Great. Thank you. Item 13, is there any other business? Can I just ask a question? Has there been any request by the school district for any permit-related stuff regarding school safety and vegetation on their property at all? Do we know?
No, I met with the superintendent today, not about that, but they don't necessarily need a permit just to do the maintenance work.
Okay.
But no, they haven't.
You don't know if they've done any maintenance work? Do you know? I mean, okay.
I do not
All right.
know.
Thank you. All right. Anybody have any?
Could I just take a couple of minutes to talk about condos?
Condos?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So what I found out, right, because we're not building condos.
No,
and I think it's a real problem, right? Because, young people would like to build up equity, right? Not live in an apartment. Older people would love to move into like a luxury condo and sell their 4-bedroom, and they have no way to do that, right? So not building condos just creates a tremendous amount of friction. And what I think is happening is the following, that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have a rule that a homeowner who wants to buy a condo can't get a mortgage on a new condo unless that condominium is already pre-sold before construction, 50% of the units. Because of that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac rule, construction lenders won't provide construction loans unless units are already 50% pre-sold, because they're worried that the condo won't be successful because you can't get a Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac loan. Now, none of that's applicable to rentals because you don't take a mortgage when you rent, right? So none of these rules about having to pre-sell are applicable to rentals. Okay, so this is like a huge problem, and it's a nationwide problem, but it hits us really hard. Like big condominium, some folks that are building huge things can figure this out, right? But like you're building 100, 150 unit thing, it's just like, it's a pain. You're not going to do it. You're just going to give up and not do it, right? So the question is, what can we do about it? And I'm wondering, Jesse, whether it makes sense, to like kick off a discussion first, like among Chittenden County, city managers, like so people have awareness that this is first a problem, some buy-in that, boy, we should really try and do something about this. And if we can get that kind of buy-in, to have a discussion, at the state level, with the treasurer, with someone that could have some influence on federal policy, because it's a big problem that needs to be solved.
Was this discussed at the luncheon at all? The Champlain Housing Trust? I mean, did they have any input on that? No. Wasn't there a big housing conference recently?
It has come up in the housing committee, the financing issue with condos and the barrier to home ownership associated with that. So it hasn't really been addressed, but some of the housing assessment needs that maybe work the housing committee gets at. I do think it's a conversation that would be great to have regionally, but also it's a gap right now. I agree with Andrew.
I mean, CHT has properties that are condos, but their income they're profit sensitive, right?
It's,
If you go to resell
it's
it, you
like a
can't.
shared equity.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, like, yeah. So, but they also have a lot of rentals as well, right? So,
One quick.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Provide you more detail on what I understand the rules.
what is the rule exactly? Is it a state rule or is it a?
No, it's federal.
Oh, Fannie Mae. Oh, it's Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. Okay.
Starts there as a
Right.
regulatory rule.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, to protect those institutions from
Yeah.
mortgages they're making.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then it bleeds into the construction finance.
Is that a holdover from 2009?
2008.
2009? Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it came out.
Yeah.
I think in addition to, managers and other elected officials talking with the treasurer, I also think it would be really interesting to bring some of the commercial banks into the conversation, because I think that they have knowledge of the local lending economy in a way that I don't have access
Absolutely.
to, but
Be
could
very
also, it could be a different kind of book of business for them that they don't have access to.
It'd
right
be
now.
yeah, that'd be great. Or maybe honestly, the Vermont Bond Bank can get involved and provide this construction financing, right? So
Aren't the feds looking to semi-privatize Freddie and Fannie?
I don't know that this policy would change without some lobbying effort. But maybe, I mean, who knows what a private Freddie and Fannie would do?
But
I
the
have no
question
idea.
is, does the business community, are they in favor of changing that as well?
I've seen a lot of advocacy pieces by the real estate industry.
The real estate, but not by, well, does that include the developers or just the new people that
Well,
sell
as advocating for developers,
Yeah,
for
okay.
sure.
Okay.
Unrelated question, just maybe for future calendar planning. I appreciated Tim asking Helen for an update on the airport activity, but we also have delegates to other committees, and we had Chris here tonight, but we don't hear from him on a routine basis, nor have we heard from Corey. It might be nice to look at where we've delegated sponsorship on various committees or activities, just to get a once-a-year update from those folks at a minimum.
Yeah.
External stuff, yeah. Okay. Anybody else?
I just have something I forgot to mention during city updates. So on Wednesday morning there is the ribbon cutting event for the shared use path at the airport. You're speaking at it. The mayor's speaking at it.
Well, that's this Wednesday.
That's this Wednesday.
It's our routine.
It's not our event.
How long a speech do I have to give? 2 minutes?
Yeah, 2 minutes.
Okay.
So if folks are around and looking for something to do at 9 on Wednesday morning, you're welcome to join.
Where's it happening?
I don't know that. The airport.
Will you
It's
send
not.
out an
I have asked the airport to put you all on the media advisory.
Okay.
Will we get free parking from that?
There's plenty of on-street parking. It's if you haven't driven past the path or walked on the path, it's really quite beautiful.
Yeah.
That's
Cool. Thanks very much. I mean, it's in my calendar, but how did we get to this week in November already?
All-day thing because we didn't have time.
Great. Is that it?
Yep.
Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 It's unanimous. Thank you very much. And please stick around to sign all the documents.